Leaders talk about what they don't want to talk about. They say what they don't want to say. They listen to what they don't want to listen to, and they plan for what they don't want to happen. And the willingness to do that is what makes them a leader. Football's a violent game. That's one of the things I love about it. And I wasn't afraid of getting hurt. But, you see someone get hurt and you ask yourself questions. And I go, man, if I got hurt in such a way that I couldn't pursue becoming a team guy, I would have wasted the trust and placed in me by the Naval Academy. I'd never really done anything that required that amount of toughness and that variety of toughness for that period of time. If you have a conviction, like, who cares how hard it is?
If you were in Trump's shoes, would you have done what he's done as it relates to Iran for the last 12 months?
I think there's no absolute right sides. But I will tell you that it's wrong to think that Iran would not continue to try to affect what it very openly says it wants to affect.
Team Dog, premium meals designed to keep your dog healthy, happy, and strong, to improve digestion, boost energy, and support a shiny coat. Non-GMO ingredients, no fillers, no gluten, no corn, no seed oils, and no soy. Just pure, high-quality ingredients to fuel your dog's best life. It was crafted by experts made for your dog, Navy SEAL K-9 trainer, and nutritionists. Team Dog Food, where no piece goes to waste.
Ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's both an honor and a pleasure to welcome my next guest to the podcast, a guy that I have known for probably just about as long as anybody in the SEAL community.
Yeah, 98.
Also a former NFL player, former Navy SEAL officer, co-classmate of mine, founder of Trident Response Group and the Holdfast Speakers Bureau. He's a co-founder of Carry the Load, which is a national nonprofit honoring fallen military, law enforcement, and first responders, which most of you have probably heard of. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Clint Bruce.
I'm setting the curve. I'm setting the curve on size and attractiveness of every team guy you've had in this.
Like, man, well, you knocked both out of the park.
Yeah,
so,
I'm dragging the bottom.
Yeah, your name kind of sounds like either a country singer or a NASCAR racer.
Yeah, there's really only 4 things you do at Clint Bruce. Like when I was growing up, I was like professional wrestler, rodeo, country music, roadie.
I think NASCAR is pretty fit.
NASCAR would have been go fast, turn left, man. I was like, I can do that one.
I feel like you could just put the club on the steering wheel and punch it.
And just go. It would have been fun.
What's the last full book that you've read?
Oh, hey, that's a great question. There's a book by an author named Angus Fletcher called Primal Intelligence. And Angus runs a Center for Story and Narrative at Ohio State. And he's a neuroscientist that somehow stumbled into kind of screenwriting and using neuroscience principles for screenwriting. And he was at University of Michigan and then somehow ended up in Hollywood, and then Ohio State pulled him to start this Center for Story and Narrative, and then SOCOM found him.
Wow.
And so there's this really neat story about how kind of the SMUs went to him and said, hey, will you help us kind of recalibrate how we're running our selection processes? Because what happens, like you and I are kind of old in our community, right? And what happened, the phenomenon they describe is, probably 10, 15 years after you and I kind of cut our teeth in the community, you had these supremely talented, highly capable special operators that had, for some reason, kind of the imagination muscle had gone dormant, and they were kind of functioning on probability vice possibility. And so they brought him in, and he kind of re-engineered to kind of resurrect that, what I think is one of the more unique skills of special operations is creativity and imagination, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really talking about, Shakespeare and neuroscience and how our academic environment teaches probability decision-making at the expense of possibility decision-making. And in our world, we're on the leading edge, and you're just cobbling together solutions. I mean, you're a farm kid, man. It's like you and Fro are just kind of making it up with what you got, right? And that muscle in the brain had atrophied. It doesn't go away because it's part of us. But it's a real interesting book, and it's got, I think, major implications in how we train ourselves, how we train the people we're developing, and the environments we put our kids into, and so it's a great book.
No, it sounds fascinating. Do you know the author at all?
Yeah, Angus Fletcher.
Yeah,
I'll send you a link to it.
Yeah, I mean,
he'd be a fascinating interview, man.
That's what I was just going to say. I mean, I'd love to
I'll
have
connect
him
you.
on.
I'm connected to him and Chris Cassidy. I connected him and Chris Cassidy the other day.
Shit.
One of our lesser accomplished team guys, best astronaut
underachiever.
and, chief of astronauts.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating. Do you have a favorite quote?
Yeah, well, I've got two of them. So one of my favorite quotes is, make no small plans, for they like magic to stir men's soul, and they themselves will not be soon realized. And it was on a paperweight on my father's desk, and I remember it when I was growing up. My father died when I was young. And it's Dennis Burnham, and he's the architect that redesigned Chicago after Chicago burned down.
Oh, wow.
And then my other favorite quote is by T.E. Lawrence, who we all know as Lawrence Arabia. And it says, an opinion can be argued with, but a conviction is best shot. Because you'll hurt for a conviction.
Yeah.
And like, we live this. Like, when we talk about SEAL training, I always tell people, like, SEAL training is pretty famous. People know a lot about it, and it's 3 phases. And like, really, administratively, there's 3 phases. I believe there's really 2 phases. There's will you, and there's can you. And will you runs up through Hell Week. Will you just do whatever it takes, right? And that's where we're trying to figure out whose conviction is that they want to be a team guy. Because everybody's opinion is day one, week 1, day 1, everybody's opinion wants to be a team guy. And then the adversity hits.
Yeah.
And stuff gets starting revealed as an opinion or a conviction. And so you have will you, which runs up through Hell Week, and then you have can you. And the guys we lose after Hell Week, most of the time we want to keep those guys. Like, hey, I want to keep you in the community. Like, you will, but you can't because you got injured or dive physics or, the job's hard, right? But you want to find ways to be around people that will. And so those 2 quotes, man, Dennis Burnham, make no small plans, and an opinion can be argued with, but a conviction is best shot.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I dig it. Getting deep right out of the gate. If you could change places with anyone in the world, who would it be and why?
Right now, like currently?
Yeah.
My wife's got it pretty good right now. Yeah.
She's got a fucking winning lottery ticket.
I don't know if she'll watch this or not. Love you. And I don't know, man. I'm digging being me right now. I just I don't know how to answer that, because I think anybody I would compare myself to probably has stuff going on that I don't know about that I wouldn't envy in the least, right? And I tell people all the time, like, hey, if you're going to compare anything, compare everything. So we tend to compare slices. Like, that's a casualty of social media, is you see this, like, the trailer. Like, how many trailers, like, you and I are 80s kids.
Yeah, the brochure.
The trailers are awesome. And then you go see the movies, like, that movie sucked, right?
Yeah.
Literally, like, one man, one blade of grass. And you see it, you're like, what? And so there's a lot of people doing amazing things that I'd love to be near and around. But I guess I'll take me.
Yeah. To me, I think there's no better way to measure whether or not you're living right if that's your answer.
Yeah.
Because if you would rather be somebody else, that's a problem.
Yeah, and I mean, and I love that, Mike. I mean, that's such a great point, right? And comparison is the thief of joy, and I tell my daughters all the time, and this is an extreme scenario of it, but I always say, like, hey, man, you look at the house, you look at the car, but look at the marriage and look at all these other things. And a lot of times when you compare the whole suite of things, you'll be like, no, I'm good. I'll be me, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's, guys I know from Iowa like you and Fro, there's an intense practicality that you have about just take what you got and run hard with it. And I think the farming life and the ranching life makes you think that way.
Yeah, I think, well, and to me, the misery that accompanies always wanting and always, I mean, it's good to be competitive and driven, but there's
Sisyphus, man, rolling a rock uphill all the time.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We did go pretty deep there really quick, didn't we?
Yeah,
That's
well,
right.
I mean, that's what she said. So.
Well
Better
played.
go all the way.
Well played.
Yeah. One question I like to ask everybody, because I think it really encapsulates the first part of your life up until adulthood. Is there a favorite thing that you did growing up?
Man, that's hard. Like, I had this kind of Huck Finn, Mark Twain, growing up in Little Rock, Arkansas, and there's a favorite thing. I like, the favorite thing makes me kind of slow down because I don't want to dishonor or forget something. And with all the TBIs that, we all have, I'll be driving home like, gosh damn it, totally forgot that one thing. But man, I have a lot of favorite things, and my family farms and ranches up in Arkansas, and one of my favorite things to do was to go up there and kind of try to be a farmer, try to be a rancher a little bit every once in a while in the summer, and just realize how hard that is. But I love being around my aunt and uncle. I love being up on Crow Mountain in Arkansas. I love being around water, wilderness, and wild things because they make us feel small but not insignificant. And so anytime I was out in the woods, anytime I was in a rural environment, I loved it all.
Yeah. The connection to nature is something that I think far too few of us value the way we should.
Well, and like a lot, I don't know about you, but I didn't miss the ocean. I
don't.
didn't think I'd miss the ocean until I moved away from it.
I still don't, actually.
Yeah, well, I don't miss the cold water. Yeah. I don't miss specifically. I don't miss the ocean off the coast of Coronado, California.
Yeah.
I was like, you can keep that, man.
Yeah.
And that was so interesting because I grew up over here at Garland. We had this thing called Wet and Wild, water park. And I used to work security there. I was a lifeguard. And I mean, I wasn't, I don't say I was the David Hasselhoff of Garland, Texas. People do say that. I don't say it myself, right? Baywatch, but I'd turn the wave pool on and just swim, getting ready to be a team guy, right? And it's like, this has got me so ready. And then, man, first time we had to go out, like swim past the surf, so I'm like, where's that? They're like, that's where the waves start. And I'm like, that's far. I've never, and you remember you and I were kind of going through around that El Nino time frame. Because remember how the berms were 25 feet high because the compound flooded so many times. And I just remember in my class, there's 200-some guys. I think only 15 or 20 people made it out past the surf zone. And it was like 19 guys from California and then me. And these 19 guys were duck diving, and I was just this big dumb animal just swimming straight up the wave, straight back down the wave, just too dumb to know there's a better way and too scared to not make it, right? And so there's parts of the ocean I don't miss for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely appreciate like the views of big bodies of water, but for me, that kind of feeling of connection to nature is in the mountains for me.
Yeah, 100%. So like Kodiak and going up those places, and that's one of the things. It's one of the things I wouldn't say we're spoiled when we're in the teams, but I think we get to see so many amazing things, and we get to travel to places that otherwise you just wouldn't go. And when you're training for austere and extreme environments, by definition, you're going to be in austere and extreme locations. And I tell people, like, you think you know big, and then you go to Alaska, and you're like, oh, that's a
big looks
that's
like.
a different big. Like that's a, and you think you know cold, and then you experience cold like you owe it money, like malicious cold, like not just cold, but like cold like it hates you and it's been looking for you its whole life. I think we're really fortunate in the things we got to see and the places we got to go.
Yeah, no two ways about it. So you mentioned that your dad died at an early age, but you split time. Like you were born in Little Rock and then moved to Garland.
Yeah. So I grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas. Moved down here to Garland, probably in middle school, and then in high school, my father got sick and he passed away, and that was one of those decisive moments in my life where you kind of got to put up or shut up. And I was on Marcus's podcast a while ago, and I told him about this. It was really a moment. I remember I was starting to get recruited by a bunch of colleges and stuff for football, and which is interesting because most people think I loved football way sooner than football loved me, and we could talk about the football journey later. But I remember going up and seeing my dad, and my dad's like, son, you got to make a 40-year decision, not a 4-year decision about what you were going to do next, because this may not work out. And man, I was not ready to hear that. I wasn't ready to consider a scenario, because my dad was big, strong. Like, I've inherited kind of his physicality and stature. When we went in the hospital, he was my size, and when he passed away, I could carry him in one arm. He just kind of declined. And I remember this. I'll never forget it. I was sitting by his bedside, and I kind of pushed back. I didn't want to have the conversation, and he grabbed my wrist. And if you read kind of the Eaters of the Dead, which is kind of Michael Crichton's version of Beowulf, there's a scene where Grendel attacks the lodge and Beowulf grabs Grendel's arm. And the point of view of the story switches to Grendel's perspective. And Grendel just says, I've never been grabbed like that before. Like, this is not a mere man. And I remember thinking that, just despite how frail my dad had become, I mean, he had such power. I mean, he gripped my house, his power was still there. And he looked at me and goes, son, leaders talk about what they don't want to talk about. They say what they don't want to say. They listen to what they don't listen to, and they plan for what they don't want to happen. And the willingness to do that is what makes them a leader.
Wow. BUBS Naturals has been supporting this show for a very long time. And I've been a fan of their collagen for years. I use it every single day. But I have to tell you, I'm genuinely fired up about what they just launched. It's their creatine monohydrate. Now look, creatine isn't anything new. Most of you know what it does. It's more energy, faster recovery, lean muscle, better focus under stress and fatigue. It's one of the most researched supplements on the planet, recognized by the International Society of Sports Nutrition. The problem is most creatine on the market is garbage. A recent study found roughly 50% of creatine products exceeded impurity limits, and most of it's manufactured in China with zero accountability. BUBS sources exclusively from Creapure. It's made in Germany under very strict quality controls. It's the purest creatine monohydrate available. There's no fillers, there's no hype. 100% NSF for Sport certified. You know exactly what you're putting in your body. And here's what makes BUBS different from any other supplement company out there. The brand is a tribute to former Navy SEAL Glenn "Bub" Doherty, who laid down his life serving Americans in Benghazi. Glenn stood for self-improvement and always helping others. That's the DNA of this entire brand. BUBS donates 10% of all profits to charity in his honor. That's a company absolutely worth supporting. Live better longer with BUBS Naturals. For a limited time, get 20% off your entire order with code MICDROP, all caps, all one word, at bubsnaturals.com. That's BUBS naturals.com, code MICDROP for 20% off.
And so for me, that's kind of...
He said all that in that stage of his life.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a lesson, you know, that's kind of shaped me in a lot of ways. And as I look at you in your life, I think you've done the same thing without having that conversation with my father. But when in doubt, do the harder thing. When in doubt, when in doubt, do the harder thing. Because at minimum, you're going to learn a lot about yourself. At maximum, you may accomplish the harder thing and learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah.
So just do the harder thing. And I think that was probably the most influential conversation I had that really shaped almost everything I've tried to do since then is wear that weight.
Yeah, what a profound experience to have.
Yeah, it was humbling. It was hard and it was humbling, but most hard things are humbling, and we're better for it.
Do you mind if I ask what happened?
Yeah, no, I'm glad to answer that question because it's another kind of cool story about my father. So all of a sudden, you know, my junior year, he started feeling bad, and then my senior year got real bad, and then he passed away. Kind of went in the hospital before second semester of my senior year and just never left, and then passed away almost 3 weeks before I had to go to the Naval Academy, right? And he was, we think, misdiagnosed for the first several months. And when he found out, I always tell the story. So when the doctors kind of said, hey, this is how I recall it. The doctor said, hey, we thought you had this disease called Wegener's granulomatosis, and it turns out you don't. And they were frustrated. They were upset because they're competitors. And one of his doctors was a Vietnam veteran. He's a MAC-VSOC guy. And so took his craft real seriously. And I remember my dad going, did you mean to misdiagnose me? And the doctor's like, well, no, of course not. He goes, did you advance how you will treat Wegener's and how you'll treat what it is I have in the process of misdiagnosing me? And they're like, yeah. And he goes like, well, okay, what's next? And I just thought that was, I mean, it was pretty powerful, right? So he ended up having a disease, and I always mispronounce it, but it's like necropoly something or other. And basically what it is, it's an autoimmune disease that effectively attacks the capillaries, like the smaller blood vessels. So it leads to kidney failure, and you never really die of it. You just everything else gets compromised. So we ultimately died of like pneumonia because the immune system failed. And it was just this slow, shitty thing, right? But it was interesting because he used all his time. Like it was, I'd go up there, you know, because he was in Medical City, which is just down the road, and I'd walk in, there'd be nurses and doctors just hanging out with my dad, and but I'd be telling stories and asking them how they're doing and making them feel better about their lives. And my dad, he died well. And I think when you can say that about someone, it says a lot about the someone.
For sure it does. Do you have any idea what causes that? Is it
I
purely
don't.
genetic?
I don't. I should probably ask. He was 46 when he passed away.
Oh, wow.
I think it was just it could have been a bunch of different things. Like he grew up in South Texas, like real poverty, South Texas. And his dad died when he was 8. And so he was around the sharecroppers and kind of all those chemicals, all those other things. So maybe there's some attribution to that, just the environment he was growing up in the 40s and 50s in an agricultural environment with the crop dusters and all that stuff. But it's just speculation really on my part.
What did he and your mom do growing up for a living?
Yeah, so my father was a business guy. He was an insurance guy. And he loved it. And it's really one of the coolest things I've ever heard an insurance guy say about his job. And he said, he goes, I love being the best part of someone's worst day. And I think there's two fronts that everybody cares about. They care about their physical safety and security and their financial safety and security. And I felt he's a protector. That was kind of his nature. And he took it real seriously. He took the ability to protect someone financially in the event of a bad thing. Because he grew up with nothing. He grew up very, very poor. I remember at my grandmother's funeral, my dad used to joke with me that they were so poor that him and my uncle go to school every other day. And in my mind, I was just like, that's walking uphill both ways, snowing and raining at the same time. And then sure enough, we went to the funeral and someone told me, it's like, yeah, your dad and your uncle, they would trade every day because they only had one pair of jeans. I was like, oh God. I was like, Dad, I'm an asshole, right? And so I just think it was his way to protect. And so my mom was a teacher. She was a Dover Master's in special education and loved the special education community, the Down syndrome. And so but Dad was insurance. Mom was a teacher. And then she started perhaps the worst child clothing company. She would design children's clothes. And she was actually pretty well known. I'm bitter because she designed 3 different kind of kids' clothes. She designed Tanner's Turtles, my little brother Tanner, and it was wildly successful. And then she designed Courtney's Caterpillars, wildly successful. And then she designed Clint's Clowns. And so she creates Clint's Clowns right at the same time It comes out with Stephen King. And I think she printed like 5,000 plates, which is what they call the design thing. In like 1986, there was a fire. 3,000 of them burned. I bought 500 of them just because I couldn't take it anymore. And I think there's still 1,500 left.
Wow. So
it was probably successful. I'm just bitter because my mom made a design right at the same time, Pennywise the Clown came out and kids are traumatized by clowns. So, so Dad moved down here. We moved down here for Dad's job. And, Garland is a great place. And, Rockwall Heath, where we are now, like it's fun to come back here and see what's happened here. And a lot of my friends that I grew up with in Garland now live out here in Heath and kind of this area. So it's fun to be out here. So yeah,
that's wild. So tell me about football. I mean, did you start playing really young or?
Yeah, I love telling the story because it's kind of influential and it's encouraging to a lot of people. And if you ever run anybody who knew me 8th, 9th, 10th grade, they'll validate this. This is not hyperbole at all. So I was so bad on football. Brandenburg Middle School, Garland, Texas. I was the 5th string fullback in 8th grade, and there were 3 other fullbacks. So you got to do the math on that one. Like, that's not particularly encouraging. And I remember my dad saying, son, I'm not disappointed you're the 5th string fullback. I'm disappointed they wrote it in the program. I'm like, what? And it's in the program, 1, 2, 3, blank 5. I was like, God. And I was so bad at football that one of my coaches told me to stop wasting his and my time and go to theater. I'm like, I'm going to go to theater because Molly's there and I love her and we're going to get married. I want to still play football, just piss you off. And so I remember, I still have it. My mom says she has it. I was like, I'm not going to quit football because it's where my friends are. It's hard, so it's going to make me better. I will always want to be part of something bigger myself, but how do I not die during football? Like this, I got to live, right? So I remember I wrote this thing down on a 3x5 card, and it was this equation. And it was angles plus allies plus advantages equals achievements. And it was the system I was going to use. And so angles are understanding our craft. Allies, make sure you run with the right people. Advantages, know what yours are, know what the mission takes, and complement yourself with others. And as I look back on that, raising daughters and get to visit with business leaders, like it's this operating system that's kind of been in the background since 8th grade. And what I'll tell you, and why I love telling about it, is the mechanics of me becoming good at football are really interesting. So I didn't quit when it got hard, and I played scout team. Well, on scout team, you get 3 to 4 reps for every 1 rep the talented guys are getting, and you play all these different positions, right? So I was getting 5, 10 reps, probably 3 or 4 times as many reps 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade as anybody else, because I was playing scout team. And you play all these different positions. So without knowing it, I was massing this knowledge of the game. And the first game I ever started was halfway through my junior season. And it's not an awesome story. I went in at halftime because a guy got hurt and another guy had just gotten kicked off the team. And my position coach will say to this day, he says it too often, I don't like it, but he says, I wouldn't make eye contact with the head coach because I thought I was getting in trouble for putting you in. Well, don't tell me that. It gets worse. My dad is up there filming other people's kids, and on camera, you hear people say, Richard, Clint's in, and on camera, my dad goes, Clint's not in, Clint's never in. I come in and I film y'all's kids. And the next thing you know, this sack made by Clint Bruce, and I never left the field after that. And I vividly remember that. This may be one of my favorite memories, right, that you asked earlier. I vividly remember going on the field, not really knowing what the plays are because I never really got any reps. And I remember lining up at linebacker and looking at the guard, and I thought to myself, like, man, when I play guard on scout team, if I'm pulling, I sit back on my heels a little bit. I bet he's pulling. So I just shot the gap and made the sack. But it was because all those invisible reps, all those things that didn't matter, it kind of built up this knowledge of the game that I didn't really know I was getting, but it served its purpose, right? So, long way, short way, it's going to benefit you. We talked about this before we turned the cameras on. And so I just never left the field after that. And I had a good career. And, you're here, Texas 5A football is a big deal. And
oh, yeah, it's everything.
And, and had a lot of opportunities. And I'd always loved the Army-Navy game. I'd always thought the Army-Navy game was special. And so I was talking to schools, A&M, Oklahoma, Texas, all these other schools. And I remember having that conversation with my father. And the Naval Academy was the one that stood out to me. And here's another fun memory. This is why I think these conversations are cool, because when you get older like we do, or you have as many questions as I do, you kind of need a primer to remember things. I remember, I don't know how often you get asked this question, but I get asked this question a lot. When did you want to be a Navy SEAL? When did you first want to be a Navy SEAL?
Oh, yeah.
And for years, I could not remember when I first wanted to be a Navy SEAL. I don't remember not wanting to be one, right? Until COVID. So COVID happened, and COVID was COVID. Like, not a lot of great things happened to it, but I got unbelievable amounts of time with my kids, my daughters. They got to spend so much time with my oldest one. Goes, Dad, do you want to watch Magnum P.I.? I'm like, hell yes, I want to watch Magnum P.I. So you turn on the new one, I'm like, no, I'll stop. We're not watching that. So I took her back to the original Magnum P.I., which is an amazing show, by the way. Our buddy Jack Carr, we would talk a lot about that because we did 2 platoons together. And there's an episode, and I think it's in the 2nd season, where they revealed that the character Thomas Magnum played football at the Naval Academy, and he was a Navy SEAL. And all of a sudden, I had this memory kind of rush to the front of my head, and it was sitting next to my dad Thursday nights at 8 p.m., Little Rock, Arkansas, watching Magnum P.I.
Wow. And
watching that episode and turning to look at my dad and go, hey, Dad, I'm going to play football at the Naval Academy and be a Navy SEAL. My dad was like, all right. So I mean, it was kind of running in the background, right? So I'd always loved the Army-Navy game. I always thought it was special. Naval Academy gave me an opportunity to come up there and play, and I had to play really, really well because academically, super hard place. I had to try to create some sort of necessity for me at the Naval Academy because academically I wasn't setting any records. And had a great career there. Tom Rhino, he and I were teammates, and really, really special place to play football, and the relationships I have. My little brother played Oklahoma State. My brother's a legitimate athlete. He played at my high school after my father passed away, and I would call back and check on him. Hey, how's Tanner doing? They're like, he's doing great. I'm like, is he training hard and playing hard? They're like, yeah, he's playing hard and training hard. I said, are we the same kind of athlete? And my coaches go, no. I go, what does that mean? Like, I'm big and strong and he's lean and fast. They go, no. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, your brother's an athlete. Like, he's a legitimate athlete. You're just angry. And I was like, all right. And, but then, you know, my year, this is 1996 football season. All 3 service academies were really good. Like, West Point was great. We were great. Air Force was good. And had an opportunity with NFL, like several of us did. Bo Morgan at Air Force Academy. Ryan Makeda, who lives out here in Royce City, you know, played Mesquite High School. He was at West Point. He had opportunity. Got Ron Lashinsky was their tight end, and then me. And so I had an opportunity to the NFL thing for a little bit. And I'd been selected I was one of 16 guys selected for the SEAL community out of Annapolis, which is a huge honor, man. And, you know, Mike McGreevy and some of these other guys, I mean, you know, I was really, really fortunate, right? And so did the NFL thing, and I knew pretty quickly in the NFL that I'd rather try for the teams, and nothing against the NFL. NFL's great. But for me, here's what I knew, and I knew it pretty quickly. Whatever I learn about myself in the NFL is going to be more what I already knew. It's going to be another chapter in a book I'd already read, right? And I just got to go where I don't know. I got to go where it's harder, right? And so here I'd been given this incredible opportunity to pursue becoming a team guy, one of 16 guys. And so for me, it was very simple. I also, full disclosure, I played the same position as Ray Lewis of Baltimore Ravens. So I do vividly remember being at practice one time going, it might be easier to become a Navy SEAL than beat out Ray Lewis. So I was like, yeah. So I did. So I left. And so kind of put a bow on that. And then came out, went through BUDS, and then checking the SEAL Team 5, went back out to the Saints briefly, and really just kind of remembered the reasons I'd left in the first place, and came back to the teams, did 3 platoons as an O, which is really fortunate. You know, as an O, a lot of times you don't get an opportunity that many deployments, so I was real lucky.
Yeah. So taking a couple steps back, one, I'm curious, and I know a lot of people are, with the academy in particular, with there only being 16 spots per class that are given to SEAL officers, how do they kind of reconcile?
Well, in 1997, they apparently suspended all academic considerations, right? And
you've all heard me talk about BEAM before, and there's a reason that I keep coming back to it. This is part of my actual nightly routine. If you somehow haven't tried it yet, that means you used to be just like me. Every night, the same story. Tossing and turning, staring at the ceiling, then dragging yourself through the next day on coffee. That was me. But BEAM sent me their dream powder, and I started sleeping through the night without tossing and turning, waking up energized instead of groggy. And when your job requires you to be sharp and on, bad sleep isn't an option. Dream is made with a powerful blend of all natural ingredients: reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, apigenin, and melatonin. None of that drugstore stuff that leaves you foggy the next morning. The chocolate peanut butter flavor they sent me is genuinely delicious. It tastes like hot cocoa before bed. Made right here in America, no shortcuts, and no junk. And I'm not alone. BEAM has improved over 28 million nights of sleep across this country. If you've been waiting for the right time to try Dream, this is it. Go to shopbeam.com/micdrop and use the code MicDrop and get my exclusive offer for up to 40% off BEAM's Dream Powder. So with my discount code MicDrop, all caps, all one word, you can get their best-selling Dream Powder for just $39. Stop pretending like you're still in your 20s and that you can survive a whole day without a good night's sleep. Place your order for BEAM and see the difference.
But I think it's an imperfect science, right? So it changes all the time.
Is it a board of people?
It's a board, and it's team guys. It's
Okay.
You have this kind of cumulative score, athletic, academic, professional scores. They interview your classmates. I mean, it's a very thorough deal. And then you have interviews with existing team guys, like I remember Tucker Campion. He was a commanding officer.
Trident.
Yeah, so he was on the selection board.
Yeah.
Dave Albinetti was a senior Chiefs Team 5 guy. Rick Hoffman. I mean, it was. So you have team guys stewarding the community. The numbers are higher now, so I think 30-something guys get out of the Naval Academy because special operations is growing, right? So the military kind of contracts and expands based on the demand signal for the different units or branches. So obviously special operations, when you and I were in, is when special operations kind of given like a charter to grow, right? But there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah.
It is, and you have, when I went through, we had this thing called pre-BUBS, which is kind of like a hell weekend at the Naval Academy, and you got to make it through that. And then they call it SOAS now, I think, or something. You go out to Coronado for a couple weeks over the summer, like a pre-BUDS kind of selection process there. And this is the officer pipeline. So, and then you do your interviews, and at the time they picked 16 guys, right? And Walter Allman, is the jellyfish and accidentally Comnev Spec War right now. I mean, he's just such an amazing guy. And Henry Krigbaum. I mean, I had studs that that's my thing. Like, surround yourself with people that are better than you, then just keep up with them, and you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And but the selection process is kind of a living, breathing, dynamic thing that's heavily influenced by the community.
Yeah.
And same thing, the Marine Corps does the same thing. Like the warfighting communities, it's almost like a lottery. It's almost like a selection committee that the warfighting communities pour into the service academies. And it's an interview process, and it's a selection process, and it's really intense.
Yeah, I mean, 16 out of 1,000, right? I mean,
yeah, so there were probably two. I don't want to get my numbers wrong, but I think there was 150, 200 guys that wanted to get it, right, and that started through the process, right.
Yeah.
And so there's 1,000 students, and the Marine Corps is very selective too. The Marine Corps coming out of the service academies are, Marines are rightly proud, and they're intense about who they let in. So the selection process is intense, and it's only more intense now.
Yeah. Second question in that kind of pipeline, how were you able to get a slot and then go into the NFL and then pick the slot back up?
Yeah, well, so I was given the slot prior to the NFL. So this was in 96, November 96, we got selected. And then the NFL thing was interesting because the plan was the service academies were trying to figure out what to do with pro athlete players. Like, I don't want to say elite level players because I was elite. They have an elite athlete program, and I'm not an elite athlete. I'm a try hard kid. Like, I'll just wear your ass out. But I don't know.
The NFL is elite no matter how.
Yeah, and so the plan was to try and do both because I was gonna go. The plan at the time was make your team, serve for 2 years, and then pivot to a reserve, and you roll between reserve. But you got to get your warfare pin. So the plan was play the first season, because I wasn't slotted to go to BUDS till '98 anyway. So I was going to class up, I think, in February '98. But I remember I was talking to Walter and some of the other guys, Muss, who's one of your class guys, and they told me that they're like, hey, guy got hurt. Another officer, not an academy guy, quit. You can start earlier if you want to. And I just remember I went and talked to Amy, and my bride. We've been married 30 years, Marine Dance State, and I said, hey, I got to go. Like, I got to go. Like, here's what I knew. I was in the NFL. Don't know how long I could have stayed there. Don't know how good I could have been, but I was there, right? So and I had no idea if I could keep up with guys like you and make it in the teams. I was like, I got to go. Like, so I would have gone in '98. And the other thing for me, too, I mean, football's a violent game. That's one of the things I love about it. I love the violence of it. And I wasn't afraid of getting hurt. But, you see someone get hurt and you ask yourself questions. And I go, man, if I got hurt in such a way that I couldn't pursue becoming a team guy, I would have wasted the trust and placed in me by the Naval Academy. Yeah. And it's the question I would ask myself the rest of my life. Like, could I have done if I hadn't got hurt? Because, our training's hard. And you and I both know incredible guys that would have been great team guys, but Rock Portage has a vote, and the body has a vote, and our community has been denied some incredible operators because the body betrayed them, so the plan was to play, then serve, and then decide, right? Because if I'd have played that whole season and then made it through BUDS and made it, then I told him, I was like, hey, I don't want to, if it can benefit the service academies, it can benefit Navy, and I can experience the NFL for a year, and I never go back, that's fine with me. So I wasn't, because I was in the special operations pipeline, I wasn't really concerned about going back or anything like that.
Yeah. So you played part of the season and then?
Yeah, just the preseason and the earlier parts of the camp, and I just remember just deciding. And Marvin Lewis was the defense coordinator at the time, and I went and told him and Ozzie, and it was neat. They were both really proud. I remember I walked to the linebacker meeting room, and Ray's in there and all this other stuff, and I said, guys, I got to go. And Ray stood up, very passionate guy, and he grabs my shoulder. He's like, go be great, go be great. And I saw him like 15 years later or something. I went back to the Ravens to talk, and he walked on. I said, Ray. And he kind of looked at me, and he recognized me. He's got a beard and all this other stuff. And I said, hey. And I put my hands on his, and he's like, I heard you were dead. I'm like, no. I'm like, if I'm dead, you are too. And I grabbed his shoulder. I said, go be great, go be great. And it's just kind of who he was. So, but the long answer to your pretty short question was, because of when BUBS was going to start, when I was going to class up, it was conceivable to do both.
Yeah. They won the Super Bowl that year, didn't they?
Not that year, it was a couple years after.
Oh, okay. One thing I've always wondered, I mean, I've known a couple of guys who either played real high level college ball, were in that bubble of maybe going to the NFL. From a pure athleticism standpoint, like at that level, is there any comparison to like the top guys at a SEAL team and their athleticism and the NFL?
It was a different kind of athleticism. And I would tell you from a toughness perspective, every once in a while you see someone at the elite levels of college and pro sports that's as tough as your average team guy, right? Athletically, when I was in the NFL, growing up here in Texas playing 5A football, the only positions that really, I'd play Division I football, play against Notre Dame, all these other schools, right? So I wasn't really the receivers, the running backs, the quarterbacks, none of that really. What I had really never seen before was the size of the NFL linemen, like how big the offensive linemen were and how fast they could move.
Yeah.
Like my first outside pass rush was against Jonathan Ogden. He was like 7'3", 420 pounds. He's not, but that's what he felt like. And he moved like a cat. I just never seen anything move that fast.
Well, I guess it's in the back now. I had it out here. We're getting ready to move, so they're shuffling things around. But David Andrews, who's the center for several Patriots championships.
Yeah, it was amazing. And then, so the offensive, the size and the athleticism of the offensive lineman, I'd never seen anything like that before. And then the power of the defensive lineman. I mean, it was just this audible, it's the difference between C4 and dynamite, right? Dynamite pushes, C4 cracks. And the offensive line was like dynamite, just the pushing power, right? I'd never had anybody. I remember I grabbed Jonathan Ogden, I locked him out because I was a pretty strong guy, and I'm like, that's right. And then he locked me out. I'm like, oh no. And and so those are the two things that really kind of blew me away. But and we do have our genetic freaks in the community. I mean, we have. I remember, and I don't want to say his name, but there was an instructor with the first name Phil.
Yeah, Ryan.
Yeah, okay. Well, there you
go. We've been talking.
That dude is a specimen, right? Like just one, he's genetically gifted, and two, he's a steward of his gifts, right? And you just see guys like him and Pat Harwood, and some of these guys are like, that just doesn't make sense. Like Waco, he's like, holy crap, right? Yeah. So we do have some specimens in the community, right? But you can be a specimen, but you got to be tough in our community. In the league, you can be a specimen and not necessarily be as tough and make it, right? Yeah. And that's not a character issue. That's just you're as tough as you got to be.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so fast forward, you go to BUBS. That's where we meet.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I met you, just physically, I was like, who the fuck is this guy? I was like, are you in the right place?
Yeah. I was asking myself the same thing. I was like, we're running how far? How far today?
Yeah. So with that, I mean, as tough as football is, even at the NFL level, physically coming to BUBS
was light years tougher, right? Yeah. And there's moments in football where you have to be acutely tough. Like you got to draw the line and hold it for 2, 3, 4 seconds, right? Nothing had demanded the mental toughness that the BUBS and the endurance toughness. Like I remember my first conditioning run. I was telling a story the other day. I just left camp, so I left camp, came right to. If there's a bad way to go to BUBS, that's the bad way to go to BUBS, right? And so I don't think I'd ever run more than 3 miles in my entire life. And our first conditioning run, I remember I was so far behind that the corpsmen were remember we had those turbo diesels back then, and the corpsman was driving next to me, and he's like, sir, just so you know, we are committing a safety violation right now. You are so far behind that we cannot effectively respond to an emergency with the rest of your class. And I just grunted. They're like, we like this guy. This guy's all right. I was the goon.
Yeah.
I mean, they told me day one, like, sir, you're the goon. What that means is no matter where you finish, the goon starts with you.
Yeah.
So you're going to get gooned every time, and then everyone behind you is going to get gooned. So every once in a while, I'd sprint up to the front and goon the whole class, just make them most. But the goon stuff, like, you're an athlete. Like, goon stuff's built for the athlete. Like, you know, carry that tire over there and back. I'm like, I'd do that. I'd rather do that than a 8-mile run, right?
Yeah.
But I'd never really done anything that required that amount of toughness and that variety of toughness for that period of time. You know, and I think I was really fortunate because I think my path to being a good athlete was so long and so incremental that I'd had to become tough. Like, I'm not easily discouraged, right? And I think that comes from not being, I'm good. I was a good football player because I wasn't good and I didn't quit, right? But I remember just some of the moments, like, you remember the run where we do this big beach run, and you just, man, get to the compound. And all of us talk about it, that one run where you get to the compound and you keep going.
Yeah.
And like half the class just turns and goes left. Yeah. And you know, we only run another couple hundred yards because the instructors want the guys who just quit to realize they just quit, right? And but I'd never done anything that required that amount of kind of consistent toughness and just like toughness across the whole domain of humanity, right? Like mental toughness, physical toughness, endurance toughness, like just tough.
Other than running, were there other aspects of training that you were kind of on the bubble of being able to pass?
Anything that was cardiocentric, which is a lot of what we do. I mean, I was the 58 wonder on all the runs. I could swim, but I couldn't swim, you know, like Ornay and Tippins and some of these other guys, right? Like, but I was, you know, I was better at swimming than I was at running. Any of the athletic stuff, like log PT, like it wasn't a break for me, but it was better than the other stuff, right?
What about the O course?
O course, my O course. The first time I did the O course, O course is very technique driven, right? Yeah. And I didn't know how to use my feet on the rope climbs and stuff, so I'm just muscling up, you know, the ropes. But I remember Ryan Angold. First time we did the O course is kind of alphabetical. So you have Angold, you have Bruce. And Ryan Angold's, I think the first time he ever ran the O course, he was like a minute off the all-time record. And the instructor's trying to look at me, and I was like, instructor, I feel compelled to just prepare you for the difference here. And I think I ran that first O course. I couldn't turn my ankles in because I'd had an ankle injury. So the spider wall, I kept falling off the spider wall. And then I kept like jumping off and trying to hit an instructor. But then I figured it out. Went over there in a weekend and figured it out. And, you know, the O course, I I could do that. Once I figured out the system, you know, I was a 6-minute guy, 6.5, somewhere in that 6-7 minute time frame. And
which that's impressive, moving that amount of mass around.
I mean, that's football, though. Football's anything that's kind of dynamic or explosive, kind of fast twitch. I was built for that. Like, I was advantaged for that. Any of the, you know, I graduated BUBS, I think I was probably the world's biggest triathlete, right? Yeah. Like, you know, so it's just a different kind of athleticism.
Yeah. Drown proofing, pool company.
I was real comfortable in the water. I kind of grew up around lakes and stuff like that, and so I mean, I will tell you, pool comp. The hardest part of pool comp for me was treading water because I could not figure out how to egg beater. Did you ever figure out how to egg beater kick?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up swimming competitively.
Okay, so I had one of the UCLA water polo players try to teach me how to egg beater, and he was like, "Hey man, I don't know what to tell you. You're doing it right, but you're still you're getting negative propulsion. Like, I don't know what to tell you." So I couldn't. So I had to. I had to duck kick the whole time, man. So I'll tell you a funny story. Chabby, Chabby. So going through pool comp, and this was my third time to do the tread and water thing. And so I get in there, and I'd passed everything else first time, every time on pool comp, right? So doing the tread and water, and I could see all the instructors kind of like, they're like, "Hey, do this." I mean, you know, the instructors can be cool if they know you're trying, right? And they were kind of laughing, and I was like, "Why are they laughing?" I look up, and Chabby had hung a sandwich. He had a sandwich on a fishing pole, standing on the high dive, He's like, Instant Bruce. And I looked up and I saw that sandwich over. He was like, maybe this will keep you up. And I inhaled a huge thing of water, like shot to the bottom. Finally got my way back up. It was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. And I'm pretty convinced I made the pool comp time, the tread water time. But I also think they're like, man, if he dies, that's on us, right? And but that might have been the hardest. That was the hardest thing for me. But everything else was, that's the thing. Like I tell people, like, be tough. Like conviction. If you have a conviction, like, who cares how hard it is?
Yeah. It's midweek, you're tired, you're hungry, and somehow you end up making the same 3 meals you always make. It's comfortable, sure, but there's part of you that's been wanting something different. Something that actually feels like a real meal without the hassle of figuring it out after a long day. That's where HelloFresh has been a game changer for me. They sent me meals to try, and the thing that got me was the variety. We're talking Vietnamese, Moroccan, Caribbean, over 80 global recipes every month. Ingredients like lemongrass, gochujang, curry paste, all pre-portioned and delivered straight to your door. There's no recipe hunting, no grocery run, no stress, you just cook. And look, I use this, and you should too. When dinner is this straightforward and actually tastes this good, there's no reason to default to takeout because nothing hits home like home cooking. Go to HelloFresh.com/MicDrop10FM now to get 10 free meals plus a free NutriBullet Ultra Plus 2-in-1 compact kitchen system. It's a $189.99 value on your third box. Free meals applied as a discount on the first box, new subscribers only, varies by plan, and you must order the third box by May 31st, 2026.
And if we're being honest, there's a dark part of us that likes being better than other people.
For sure.
Like,
yeah, I mean, there's a huge ego.
Watching some dude quit and knowing you lasted a little bit longer, and there's no malice towards the dude, right? And, but I was kind of that rocky under, like I like.
It's interesting. There seems to be kind of one of two types of people in that way. You know, for some people, I think it actually makes them consider quitting.
Yeah.
You know, and then for some, and I fall into that other category, is especially because when I showed up, I mean, I was 5'11", 145 pounds.
Yeah.
You know, and seeing guys like you, and I was just like, who the fuck am I? Standing
and then
around.
we start running. And you're like, ha ha.
Well, yeah,
what's up?
But just seeing guys that when I saw them, I was like, man, that like I'm out of my league here. And then they quit, and you're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not. You know. And it was, for me, it was a huge ego boost.
I loved it. I love winding up every day, and I want to use the right words here. I don't like ending every day thinking I'm better than somebody else. I do like ending the day knowing I wanted something more.
Yeah.
I just wanted more. That's what I love about football. Football is, I have 76 chances to. There's a guy lining up for me saying he wants it more than me, and I got 75 chances to prove him wrong. And like I would talk to guys that I played against, and they're like, "You're the meanest guy I ever played against." I'm like, I didn't. They're like, "You hated me." I didn't hate you. You're just in the way. Yeah. And there's a place these guys I love said we're going to go, and you were in the way. And being in the way feels like hate sometimes, but that's not what it was. I just love these guys that much, right? But yeah, I mean, I it's funny to say I loved it. And Hell Week's one of the funniest things you've ever seen, right? Hell Week, I think for me, Hell Week might have been one of the easier things because Hell Week was just about being tough. You're not making times, you're not making runs, you're not making swims. Like Hell Week's just like, hey, do you mean what you say? And that might have been my superpower. It was just like, I can run as slow as I can run slow, just don't stop. Like I do that. That's my whole life. We're in my granny gear right now.
Yeah, no doubt. Would you say that like the NFL experience that you had helped in BUDS?
Here's why I think it would. I think it would because I knew what it was. So there was no grass is greener on the other side thing. Like it's not that it lost its appeal at all to me. I just knew what it was, and I knew what it wasn't. And I think sometimes guys will quit because they think this other thing that they're not doing might be better. And I just never had that. I was fortunate, and I was like, okay, I know what it is. I know what it isn't. I know how it won't fill my soul. So I didn't. It wasn't any kind of distraction or alternative.
Yeah.
So I think it was good for me in the sense that it wasn't an option.
Right. What do you think breaks most people who quit in BUBS?
That's a great question. I think one thing that breaks a lot of people is if they're doing it for anybody else but themselves. Like if you're trying to prove yourself worthy of somebody else who's not there, like you just, I think we're all trying to prove something, prove someone right, prove someone wrong, but you got to be there because you want to be there. Like this has got to be the dragon you want to slay, and I think going there for the wrong reasons, you just won't make it.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. I mean, one of the really I'd say humbling and special experiences I got to have was being an instructor afterwards.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
seeing behind the curtain. And,
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah,
kind of similar, just like going through. There were always guys that are like, well, this guy's going to make it, and then he doesn't. And other guys are like, there's no fucking way this guy. And then graduation day,
and the fire in the gut guys, like none of us. Like, one of the things I always marvel at you guys too. Like, you were what, 18 when you enlisted went in? Man, I would look at you guys and like, there was no way I was that mature when I was 18. I was like, I did not have the maturity and intensity. I was so proud of, and not a little bit jealous of, kind of the intensity and maturity that I saw you young guys, because I was 23, 24, right? And I was like, man, I was looking at y'all going like, that's unbelievable that these guys came here with this kind of maturity and resolve.
Well, for me, I think there was a certain level of maturity maybe that was above average, but honestly, I think my biggest augment or help making it through training was kind of the naivete.
Yeah, if ignorance is bliss, I'm the happiest guy around. Yeah.
I mean, I grew up in the same house my entire life,
yeah.
the same bedroom, basically, and
so this is your first big adventure.
Yeah,
really.
and like my parents dropped me off at
hell of an
MEPS
adventure, man. For a first adventure,
show
that's
up
a
in the
big
Navy,
one.
and so it was like I didn't really have much to compare it to.
Yeah.
I knew it would be hard. I'd spent most of high school, researching to the best of my ability. This is, pre-internet for the most part. There wasn't anything, there were a few books to read. There were some workout tapes by like CJ Karachi.
Yeah. I remember those. Absolutely.
But that was it, and so it was like, that's what I wanted to do. And there wasn't much else to it. There wasn't this huge, like, kind of swirling of ideas and thinking, well, maybe this is better or not. It was like, I can look out past the surf zone and see, this big Navy ship sitting out there. I know I sure as fuck don't want to be
haze gray and
on that.
underway. Like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I know I don't want to be on that.
Yeah.
So, I think that was kind of the crux of it is I just was kind of naive to what else even existed, But
when you were an instructor, what did you, if you had to give like really 3 reasons someone doesn't make it, what would those 3 be from an instructor's perspective?
I mean, from the instructor perspective, it's tough because you see so many kids go through and you get to know some of them obviously better than others.
Yeah.
But I would say, to your point, is spot on, is if you're there for any reason, if you're there because you want to say you did it,
right?
Or because your dad
we know
said
that you want to be a SEAL or do you want to do what SEALs do? The guys who just want to be SEALs, they're not going to make it. You got to want to do what SEALs do.
And maybe as simple as it sounds, just the cold.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's a different animal, man.
I mean, it really is, and it's not that it's extreme cold, it's the exposure to it. Yeah, that you it's like you can't ever get away from it, and
it always gets worse during Hell Week.
And I think the last thing that I think, the rarity for especially young men at that age and their inability to compartmentalize an evolution at a time or one step, they're looking at how long is this training?
Right.
When are we supposed to graduate? It's from now, and not being able to stay present.
Right.
And just worry about what you're doing right now.
I'm sure you get asked this all the time, but I talk to young guys that are going through their various selection pipelines, and the guys that are about to go to Hell Week, I go, hey man, I can tell you exactly what's going to happen, and you still got to do it, right? I said, but I'll tell you one thing: if you're thinking about Friday on Sunday, you're not going to make it.
Yeah,
it's too far. And on Sunday, you think about midnight. Midnight, you think about morning. You just go to the next thing, right? I always tell my daughters, if you got to swim the ocean, just swim as far as you can see. Because if you think about swimming the oceans too much, like you and I have both been underway, like ocean's a big place, right?
Yeah, and I think, for me, and I don't know if I if somebody mentioned it or if it just kind of made sense. But I found myself, at least in training, just worrying about the next meal.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, just get to breakfast, just get to lunch, just get to dinner, you know, whatever. And, you know, or the shift change, you know, it's like breaking it up into very small blocks and just worry about it.
And you Iowa boys know cold.
For sure.
Like, you know cold. Like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I remember playing pond hockey growing up and falling through the ice and having to walk home, you know, like almost freezing to fucking death, you know, on the way home. And
do you feel like that kind of Midwest Iowa kind of stoicism, hey, no one's a victim, just work harder, that had to advantage you, but both then and since? For
sure it does, yeah. I mean, you know, and there was, I've mentioned this on a few of my own episodes and even in the book and whatever, but there, you know, the way of life is one thing. The elements are tough. It does get pretty hot in the summer. It gets really cold in the winter.
Yeah.
And just the way of life there is tougher, I think, than it is in most places.
Yeah.
But, you know, I had an incident as a freshman. I was really small. I was 5'4", 105 pounds, and I got jumped my freshman year, and just got the absolute shit beat out of me. And I actually had this conversation with my dad the last time I was home, because he barely remembers. He remembers it happening, but the conversation we had after, kind of reminiscent to what you shared about your father on his deathbed, is it was one of the most impactful, probably the most impactful conversation I've had in my life. And you know, I went home and I was scared to death to go back to school, and you know, like my face was all swollen on one side and all bloodied up and messed up on the other. And you know, when I told him what happened, I completely assumed, I took for granted, like from a sense of entitlement standpoint, he is for sure going to go there, start cracking skulls and make something happen and whatever, and he didn't. And not because my dad is not that kind of guy.
No,
I mean, he wrestled with Dan Gable in high school and you know, trained with him prepping for the 72 Olympics. Like, he was a Division I college wrestler.
Jeez.
You know, he's bigger than I am. He's still, like, we still tussle and
wrestlers are different animals, man.
Yeah, and but you know, he said something very, very poignant that stuck with me and was very pivotal. You know, he was like, as a man, you know, there's going to be times in your life where you want and need to depend on somebody, and nobody is going to be there for you. You have to be able to figure out how to face being scared of whatever you're scared of, and figure out how to get through it on your own.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" You know, because again, I'm 14.
Yeah, there's 5 of them.
Well, there was 40 of them.
Yeah.
You know, and so I was just like, "Holy shit! Okay, I guess I got to figure this out." And so, even though being terrified, I went to school and faced it and figured it out and just got through it. You know, but that one piece of advice was such a turning point in my life that that made everything different. And I think back to your question, is that region of the country, because of the elements and because it's, you know, largely a farming community, very industrial.
And the 90s were a hard season. It was a hard season for the agriculture.
Well, and you know, in Iowa, John Deere is the biggest. You know, I mean, that's, both my parents worked for him for decades, and it's just a very blue collar, but I think a lot of times you hear that in a negative way.
No, it's beautiful.
But you know, there was, I think, such a simplicity and such a community-driven feeling to the town I grew up in.
I think
you felt like you were on the same team.
Yeah.
You know, and it was the community against everything else. You know, and I think that's one of the biggest and most detrimental things that's lacking in society across the country now, is that feeling of community.
Unity and toughness, right? And and I think it's even physiological, right? Like, I think there's parts of the younger generations, because knowledge is so accessible. Like, you and I, you know, Encyclopedia Britannica, you got to write a report, you know,
the library.
So there's it's not a character flaw that these muscles haven't been developed, but you know, like, I think the greatest thing that happened to us in the 80s is everything's hard, and so when it's hard, it doesn't shock you. You're just like, oh, it's supposed to be hard, right?
Well, I think the other thing too is, like, most kids from that era were latchkey kids, and I think the biggest outcome that a lot of kids today don't get, because it's not the same way, is learning consequences
Yeah.
on your own.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
there's a parallel with dog training there is that,
Sure.
you know, you manipulate the training environment to set the dog up so that he'll make the decision that you either want, and it gets rewarded or reinforced, and so it's likely to occur again, i.e. the training or shaping of behavior. But there's also, if there's a negative consequence, then the dog learns not to do certain things. You know? And so as a latchkey kid in the 80s and early 90s, you know, you're going out and riding your bikes through construction zones and figuring out, well, that was a fucking dumb idea.
Dumb.
You know, instead of your parents telling you, you probably shouldn't do this, you learn the hard way, you know, and that rarely exists nowadays.
And we're better for it. Like,
for sure.
We really are, right? You know, we got the scars for it. And I've always taught my daughters, like, easy now, hard later, hard now, easy later. That's the only way of it.
Yeah.
And so whatever you choose easier now, it's going to be hard later. But if you choose hard now, the hard stuff is easier later. Right?
Yeah, I mean, to me, like, I love the, you know, choose your hard. It's going to be hard either way, you know.
Yeah.
So pick which one you want, you know. It might as well be beneficial.
That's right.
You know?
That's right.
All right, so you make it through BUBS. Where did the going back to the Saints for a brief time, where did that fall into your career timeline?
It was right when I checked into BUBS. This is pre 9/11. Pre 9/11, it was 98, so the 98 season, and Admiral Richards was running the community at the time, and the Goat Locker at 5 was like, you know, the Saints called like, hey, we'd like for you to come try out, and the Goat Locker 5 was like, get us tickets, don't embarrass the community, right? And Admiral Richards was running the community at the time, and they thought, like, from a recruiting perspective, it could be good, and there, you know, the reserve side of the teams was building an identity then and trying to figure out how to be relevant and not just, you know, come in when the guys want time off, right? So, you know, went out there for that, and then you know, it was just easy to come back, man. Yeah.
Has coaching ever crossed your mind? You seem like you'd be a good football coach.
You know, it's when I first got out, I thought about coaching. But, you know, the same reason I haven't gone back to many Army-Navy games. I lost all 4 Army-Navy games by a total of 7 points, combined last minute and a half minutes. 2 of them are my fault, right? And so going back to a game that I lost is like driving your hot ex-girlfriend on her next date with a better-looking guy, right? and to go into coaching for me at the time was like
This time of year, I always end up looking at my closet and thinking, I've got way too much stuff, and half of it I never wear. So I've been simplifying, fewer pieces, but better ones. Things that are well made and actually easy to reach for every day. That's why Quince has been on my radar. They sent me some of their stuff to try and give my honest take. And the quality really surprised me. Their linen pants have been a go-to. They're lightweight, breathable, comfortable, but they actually look sharp. They're not sloppy. That balance is hard to find. And their Flow Knit activewear is moisture-wicking, anti-odor, and soft enough you'll want to wear it all day, not just to the gym. Here's what makes Quince different. They work directly with ethical factories and cut out all the middlemen. So you're paying for the actual quality and not the brand markup. We're talking 50 to 60% less than comparable brands. That's not a gimmick, it's just a smarter way to buy. Refresh your wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/micdrop for free shipping and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. Go to quince.com/micdrop for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/micdrop.
I knew I could always go back to it. And so now is the time to cheer. Hey, can I do anything besides football? Hey, I've been on the ball field and the battlefield my whole life. Like, can I live on other maps? Can I do other maps? I know I can go back to this. It's like a reserve, you know, shoot. But can I do other things?
Yeah. I'm curious. I mean, knowing nothing about it, but, you know, having been a fan of the game my entire life. I mean, I played young growing up, wasn't any good. But, like, hypothetically, if, you know, the Ravens, you know, letting Harbaugh go, if they called you tomorrow and said, Clint, we want you to come hit, like, could you even do it? Or would you, that pipeline?
Yeah, you could. I mean, I think if you're someone, I think you could step into it if you got a history in football and you know how to staff. I mean, it's like being an O. It's like, I mean, listen.
I mean, what does the head coach
the
even
boys
really
do all the work. Well, there's really 2 kinds of head coaches. There's CEO coaches, and then there's kind of strategic position. Like in college football, there's CEO coaches who can manage this kind of environment and all this other stuff, right? And then there's position coaches that are so good at what they do, they fleet up and become head coaches. Those guys are kind of miserable because it's less about the X's and O's now. Now that there's this general manager position emerging in college football, a lot of the true head football coaches are going to get to be head football coaches again. But, I tell everybody, like, with the right team, you can do just about anything. And so, like, a head coach, it's like being an OIC. Like, the OIC is like, you got a good chief, you got a good LPO, you got a good sled dogs, you're going to be fine. Just, get them what they need, give them good mission sets, and kind of get out of their way a little bit. So it's not really that different. I've never found leadership to be that difficult. Like, ridge line, left and right limits, resources, go. And then you make guys repeat it back to you, especially the left and right limits, because they'll be like, you didn't tell us that. I'm like, no, I 100% told you that. Like, repeat the left and right limits to me, right? But, surround yourself with talented people, point them in the right direction, give them what they need, and then just marvel at how great they are when they're well-resourced and given hard things, right? So I think you could.
Yeah. Is it something if hypothetically an NFL or a big college program called you and said, hey, we want you to be the head coach?
I don't know. I've never thought about that. I've never thought about that potential. I think it would be hard to not really consider.
Yeah.
I love what I do now, right? So that it'd be hard because I love what I do now, right? If I didn't love what I did now, I'd do it in a heartbeat, right? But it's a wild scenario to consider.
Yeah. Could you walk us through your career in the SEAL teams, just like from a chronological kind of synopsis?
Yeah. So I did Chicken and SEAL Team 5, did a 3rd there, then was over when 9/11. So we pivoted right to the Middle East, start doing all the ship takedown and stuff like that. Came back and picked up an OIC and did another platoon. So I did, PACOM, CENTCOM, PACOM, and loved it, man. I just, when I kind of got back, I hit that season where, like, give us your gun and here's a laptop. And I'm like, I don't type it well. And listen, I had a mate. Beef was my 3rd my AOIC. And, like, I look at guys like Walter and some of these other guys. I'm like, man, the best thing I could do for the community is just get out of some of these guys' way. Like, these are Coleman. The list goes on. These are amazing. And
so many good dudes.
Yeah, there's so many good guys, man. And
so you did a 3rd first?
Yeah.
AOIC.
Which was neat because a lot of 30s. So I got to carry 60 my first platoon, man.
Yeah,
and I
awesome.
loved it. Like,
I honestly think if the numbers allow it, that should be a requirement.
100%. I think those should either do a 3rd or they should IA overseas, do a deployment, and see what platoons are really doing and going to. And like my cousin Jared Ogden, he was Team 1, and he was Dan Canasson, so he fleeted up when Dan got hurt. So his first platoon was Afghanistan, tick every day, right? And the thing I think that helped him a lot is he'd done an IA over with Damneck, so he'd gotten to see what it's really like downrange and how mission sets come and all this other stuff. So I think the more chance a young officer gets to see the work get done and see the boys do what they do, you're going to be a better officer.
Especially if they're part of it. And for the listener, sometimes when me and another team guy get together, sometimes we'll get lost in the terminology and realize that
we'll start speaking under a shorthand. We'll start doing our shorthand.
Sometimes you don't know exactly what we mean. So the 3rd is basically the 3rd in charge, which is rare. Usually there's an assistant officer in charge and an officer in charge. Rarely there's a 3rd officer. In that case, he's just kind of one of the enlisted guys, basically. But then there's the 2nd in command and the 1st in command. And the pipeline for officers is usually, if they're a 3rd, they do that. Then they do the 2nd in charge. Then they do the in charge, where they're the officer in charge. So for you, your 2nd in charge, your AOIC, and your OIC billets, were both of those were CENTCOM combat deployments?
No. So PACOM was first one. Then PACOM surged into CENTCOM, and then the 3rd platoon was back in PACOM.
Okay. So your AOIC...
Yeah, AOIC was CENTCOM.
Yeah. Just because that's probably, I assume, the most dynamic of the deployments you did.
The middle one, yeah. The 2nd deployment was the best.
Was it to Iraq or Afghanistan?
It was the Gulf. So we were doing all the MEOs. We were doing all the surges.
That being one of the things that I think, even or especially right now with what's going on in Iran, is pretty relevant.
Yeah.
But it's also a thing that I think gets overlooked or not talked about as much. I'd love to hear if you have a couple of stories of different things. That
Oh,
you
the
did during
MEOs,
that
yeah.
time.
I mean, listen, at the end of the day,
That's maritime interdiction.
Maritime Interdiction Operation, and it's as close as we'll get to being allowed to be pirates, right? And
Other than doing anti-piracy contracting.
Exactly. It's an important mission set, though. Yeah. Because post 9/11, the whole thing was lockdown, the lockdown of Gulf, and the HVTs, material, all the other stuff, try to get it. And so, you have these huge ships, steaming at night, and there's disputed. Iran says, hey, these are our sovereign waters, and the rest of the world goes, no, your sovereign waters over here, right? So it's a little bit of a chess match. You've got these big ships moving at night, running at speed. You're trying to hit them with boats, and they have all these countermeasures on it, and then they're trying to steam back in Iranian waters because they know you're going to have to disembark at the time, and it's a real Navy mission. It was cool, and you're breaching, and you got a clock ticking down, and the boys got to get in that bridge. We take the ship down before it steams in Iranian waters, and the dudes I was with, like watching Fro on a saw and Mudbug and all these other guys, just watching them work and watching them be great. It was really a lot of fun. It was a good mission, and it was important.
Yeah, and as it relates to kind of what's going on now, do you foresee, and I know some of the stuff you're even doing professionally now has ties to what's going on, but do you foresee special operations, specifically the SEAL teams or maybe MARSOC, implementing any type of maritime interdiction right now?
Without speculating and trying to say I know what's going to go on, it would not surprise me if we put the full power of the United States Navy and Marine Corps' ability to control the seas in play. We've seen it on the shores of Venezuela. We've seen taking the ships down, and 70% of the world's covered with water, and if we can create right away and create a safe, successful sea trade, we're going to do it. Yeah. And I don't think there's anybody better in the world. I mean, the Coast Guard guys are amazing. Coasties, watch these Coast Guard guys do stuff, and even some of the the surface warfare VBSS teams are really good. But it wouldn't shock me if our guys will be doing that piece of our craft quite a bit.
Turning the dial on, or shifting it from whether or not we could or couldn't over into the should or shouldn't category. What is your take on that type of tactical kind of conflict with
here's what I'll tell you. Fear, love, and greed is the only reason anybody does anything. And I think as a nation, we'd love for people to love us. And if they don't, then we'll pay them. And that's basically greed. And the problem with it is for $1 more, the guy who's guarding you will gut you, right? And so really we have to be willing to pull that fear stick, right?
Do you think we should?
Well, I think to a degree, I think we absolutely need to make pirates second guess their plans, and I think we need to smuggling all the illegal trade that goes on overseas. I think we absolutely need to.
I guess more from Iran specifically, the Straits of Hormuz.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's an important body of water, right? And I don't think we need to be the only ones doing it. And I think that's kind of what President Trump is saying. It's like, hey, who gets oil through the Straits of Hormuz? And so we're going to be the only ones doing this? Well, like, I think we need to protect and preserve our energy sector and system, and invite the help of others. Like, I did a bunch of ship takedowns with the Aussies. Those dudes are amazing. Like, they don't care. They're like the public school cousin that comes down and starts fights all the time. Those guys are awesome. They're like, their risk aversion briefs are like, it's a butcher block paper. Like, yeah, we're gonna go there and do that. But I think we need to impose our will where it preserves our economic ability to protect others, both our nation and the other nations that depend on us.
To me, I have, I guess, conflicting views on it. I can see both sides. It's definitely a complex issue, but I'm curious if you kind of draw back or draw up to maybe the 30,000-foot view and you look at it as kind of geopolitics in its entirety, and you think about, our both decision and or desire to do what what we did, 6-8 months ago with the nuke bombings. Fast forward to the last month worth of strikes, and at this point over 10,000 of them.
Yeah.
Put yourself in.
There
in
has
Trump's
to be an
shoes.
exit strategy. There has to be an end state.
That, but I guess if you were in Trump's shoes, would you have done what he's done as it relates to Iran for the last 12 months, or would you have done anything different?
I think that there's no absolute rights in this, but I will tell you that it's wrong to think that Iran would not continue to try to affect what it very openly says it wants to affect. Like Iran, and there's a difference between, and I want to be clear, there's a difference between Iran and Iranians. There's a IRGC, there's the regime, right? And because Iran is not this homogenous nation, it's a historically a Persian nation, and so same thing when we talk about China. There's a Chinese Communist Party and there's Chinese, right? So I don't want to commingle them, right? But I do think we're well served to. This is one thing I'll give radical terrorists credit for, is they're generally pretty honest. They're telling you what they want to do, and they're telling you that they're going to do it. And
well, they're honest with their objectives. They're not particularly honest with what's going on.
They're deceitful and everything else.
Yeah.
But they say, hey, we are going to launch attacks. We're going to that's their end state. That's their desired end state to affect this. I mean, Iran has been the state-sponsored terror for you're in Iraq, and you see the
I mean, like I've thought for a long time is that if you were to just dissect Iraq and Afghanistan, or I'm sorry, Iraq and Iran, like to me, if we were going to do what we're doing now, it probably should have been done 20 years ago when they were killing hundreds, if not thousands, of American troops. Now the tough part is let's say hypothetically you go back to 06, 07 Iraq when it was kind of at the height of the EFPs and the Iranian influence into the killing of American troops. Is if we had done what we're doing now then, can you imagine the amount of drones being launched into FOBs and and compounds in the green zone? Like there would now have been hundreds of thousands of U.S. troops as sitting ducks, basically, and it would have been way worse. Where I struggle is in two things: is that one, the nuke capacity being a threat, yes. Is it something to worry about? Absolutely. Does it justify?
But from a probability perspective,
yeah, I mean,
where does it fall?
Well, there's that.
I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of other countries that have nuke capabilities that we're not particularly friendly with. Maybe I shouldn't say a lot. There's a few. I mean, particularly there's Russia and China, which I get that the preemptive strategy here and thinking like because Russia and China, and you could even lump North Korea in there, because they have the capability, it changes how we have to deal with them. And there's a desire to not want to be on that same playing field with Iran. It's still tough to justify doing what we're doing in some ways. Now, to me, I don't think it's a bad thing to not have the IRGC and the regime that's in charge of Iran in charge of Iran.
Right.
Like, to me, it's pretty easy to say,
right,
yeah, it'd be great if they're not the ones leading the charge there. Does that make it justified in doing what we're doing, especially when you're using, the Straits of Hormuz? And I get that specifically oil and just the energy sector, generally speaking, is a global commodity that is affected by the overall price of oil internationally and not just here in the United States. What I don't understand is that, if America uses roughly 20 million barrels a day, we produce 15. Between Canada and now Venezuela,
where else could we source the
we for sure could not have to rely on that. So what I don't understand is before doing what we're doing now, why not figure out a way to make the global price of oil not impact the domestic price of it?
Diminish dependency, right, economically.
Like that.
My certainty orbits where your certainty is. Regime-centric and some of the funding mechanisms and some of the overt and discrete agendas that have been pushed out by that regime for the last 40 years, right? Beyond that, it's nebulous, it's murky. And one of the things I think sometimes we make a mistake as a nation and as leaders is secondary and tertiary effects. Like, and I think we need to always consider if this, then this, then this, then this, and we need to be very diligent in our study of that and our decision making accordingly, because there's always going to be unintended consequences, right? And so I think we got to be decisive where we have to be decisive and where clarity is real as it relates to the regime. And after that, I think we need to be thoughtful.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of leadership, because it's such a big part of who you are and what you do now, is there a leader in the SEAL teams in your entire experience with them that stands out as being the consummate textbook leader that inspired?
Well, I mean, I'm biased because we're really close friends, but I think Beef Drexler, Captain Drexler, is, just a steward of the community and the craft. Walter, I mean, he's all-star. I mean, I had, Commander Dietz, Tom Dietz was my skipper. I was really fortunate. I had some really, really great command master chiefs and commanders. I was most exposed to Commander Dietz, and really appreciated his leadership. I look at guys like Walter and just marvel at his ability to command with just kind of this effortless kind of ease. We've got some great leaders in the community, but for me, like, our senior enlisted is what makes our community, right? And,
well, I mean, I can't disagree with
yeah,
that.
well, I mean, listen,
guy.
when I talk, I tell people all the time, like, hey, in all but the aviation community, the enlisted is where the talent is. The aviation community is a little bit different, but the enlisted are what our enemies rightly fear, and that's where the courage, creativity, initiative, and valor are, right? And if the enlisted are the backbone, the senior enlisted are the spinal cord. And so, like, the goat locker when I checked in the 5 was an all-star goat locker, right?
And for those listening, that's the E7 and above, the Chiefs.
Yeah, and it's the cradle of knowledge in our community, right? And so we had, I look at some of the senior enlisted guys. Dano was remarkable. John Gay was my first commander master chief. You look at guys like Pat Howard, Bruce Lehman, some of the guys over at Dam Neck. That's a senior enlisted led community over there, and there's just Lou Massey, some of these other just. Waco. I mean, there's just, the list goes on, right? Just, it was an embarrassment of riches when it comes to high quality men with high caliber talent that take care of the mission and take care of each other.
When you look at guys like Dietz and Drexler,
mm-hmm.
any of the senior enlisted guys that you've referenced, is there a singular thing that stands out with them that makes them the leaders?
Conviction. Yeah, they're selfless. I mean, there's a selflessness that comes with conviction, right? Because, when I talk about being tribal, I say, hey, when there are groups of people, when there are gatherings of people, you can always call them one of 4 things. There are gaggles, groups, teams, and tribes. And what makes these things different is what yokes them together. So a gaggle is yoked together by problems. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong choice, right? Groups share a preference. Teams share a purpose. But then adversity hits, and you figure out if that purpose is an opinion or conviction, right? And so when adversity hits, that opinion drifts, that purpose drifts towards opinion, and you go away, right? There's an attrition moment. But if it's conviction, you stick. And the way I say it is, like, there are 32 teams in the beginning of every NFL season. And in January, just the tribes are left. Because the NFL is built to be a 500 system, right? There's the difference between the teams isn't talent. On a position basis, you may have a Calvin Johnson or a Julio Jones, or you may have an extraordinary talent. But on the aggregate, most teams, there's parity there, right? And there's parity on spin, too. So what I think is what you see, the teams that play in the Super Bowl are the teams that get out of their own way very quickly. And it manifests itself in performance speed. And we've seen this operationally. You see units that just kind of flow, and you're just like, holy crap, right? And what I think you're seeing selflessness there. You're seeing the removal of the self. And the way I say this, teams row, tribes flow. There's a fluidity when you're seeing a tribe go, because it's the collective shedding of the self. Self doesn't matter as much as the mission and the man and woman next to you. And the leaders I've always been most inspired by and wanted to be around are the ones that they're take great pride in who they are, what they do, and their ability, but they're proud and selfless at the same time. And combined, I call that conviction, right?
When adversity hits, you realize, or it's unveiled, whether or not it's
That's
an
the
opinion
cleaving
or a conviction.
That's the cleaving moment. Like adversity collides. You go, hey, that's why I kind of go to BUBS and I go, it's will you and can you?
Yeah.
And up to Hell Week, I mean, you're not learning a lot about being a team guy up to Hell Week. Like, you're just putting out, doing anything they want you to do. Like, the learning comes after you make it through Hell Week, right? And so, for me, Hell Week is when you find out whose opinion is they want to be a team guy and whose conviction is they want to be a team guy. And then after that, when someone has conviction, because they will, but they can't, let's find a way to keep them in the community. Let's send them to intel school. Because we want to be around men and women who will.
Yeah. All right. So, as you finished your career militarily, what was the catalyst that made you decide, okay, it's time for me to leave? Was it as simple as an officer, your career kind of?
I mean, that was influential. That was the influential part of it. Like, I don't know if I was good enough to go to Dev Group or any of that stuff. Like, I don't think anybody does. But also, my father died when I was young. I got a mother, brother, and a sister, and my bride had just had her oldest daughter while I was deployed. And I was looking at a universe of peers that were just amazing. Like, some of the officers you and I know, and I was like, that's just the best thing I do for the community is just get out of that guy's way, right? And there's an inflection point in the officer path where you stop being with a platoon, right? And that's just kind of what I love the most. And I don't know if I have the talent to be good at anything that I'm not passionate for, right? And not that I wouldn't have been passionate about it, but and it was just kind of time. My family needed me to come home, and I think you always feel like you got out too early unless you know you got out too late. I don't think there's a coaching, serving, like you always wrestle with, did I get out too early, unless you know you got out too late. So there's no magic moment, right? But as a guy without a father, becoming a father was important. And there's amazing fathers in the community. But I had some family circumstances where I needed to come back home and help take care of my family. And so came back home to Texas and started trying to figure it out.
And what was that process like, the transition out and
Tough.
then trying to decide what you wanted to?
Yeah, I the way I answer that, you get this question, I get this question a lot. People go, hey, what's your favorite gun? And I always slow down, and this is a long way to answer your short question. I go, I said, are you asking what my favorite gun is, what my favorite weapon is? And the younger they are, the faster go with the same thing. I go, no, a gun's a tool. A weapon is what I use to win. My favorite weapon is a map. Because once I have a map, I have everything. I know where the bad guy be. I know to come in, bring, leave, how to get home. And if I have a map, the worst I'll ever be is wrong, but I won't be lost. And I kind of describe my life back graphically as I lived on the ball field, the battlefield, the boardroom, and the breakfast table. We're on the breakfast table our whole lives. We're born into a family, and then we build a family, right? The ball field kind of describes my season life as an athlete. The battlefield describes my season life as a member of the military. The boardroom was that map that I moved into after the ball field and the battlefield. And I will tell you, it's the most lonely and lost I've ever felt my entire life. For the longest period of time, I'd never felt that lost and lonely. Because the ball field and the battlefield maps, they're very simple. They're not easy, but they're simple. You have clarity on where the high ground is, and you step into an ecosystem and an infrastructure that predates you and will live after you and exists solely to get you as high and as far as you're willing and able to go. And so on the ball field, I'd been assigned, teammates and coaches and all these other things. On the battlefield, I've been assigned teammates, senior enlisted, command officer. And in the boardroom was the first time I had to assemble. That's what I'd already been assigned, and it was hard, right? And so for me, it was challenging, right? Because what was going to provide the same satisfaction and clarity of purpose that the other two seasons of my life had? But even physiologically, what I learned about myself is I have this kind of self-awareness sonar, right? Where you ping and you measure your value to others and your value to the mission based on the response, right? So as a football player, every 7 seconds, self-assess my value to the team and the mission, right? And you go to the sidelines and the position coach tells you, you go to the halftime coordinator tells you, end of the game, outcome, head coach, fans tell you, right? So you're never really lost. Effort, return on effort, right? Battlefield's kind of the same way. We're a very honest community in our highest forms. Like, you'll know if you've earned the Trident that day or you haven't, right? The business world, the boardroom is much slower. Like, I'd never done anything where you have to wait 6, 9 months, a year to figure out if what you did last Tuesday was right. And so there's the physical sensation of not knowing where I was, how to matter, who to matter. And I've also never been a real money guy. Like, I've seen it ruin enough people, and I've seen enough really, really wealthy people who are no happier than me, and maybe even less happy. So figuring out what winning looked like in the boardroom took me a little while. And really, I kind of stumbled into it, right? I went into a professional environment. I worked for amazing guys, really, really good men. They're really, really masters of their craft. I just couldn't care as much about the craft as I was supposed to, right? And all, all you guys are operating and doing all the work, and you're missing it. You're missing the guys, and your guys are having amazing deployments, doing all these other things, and you miss it, right? And and you don't know if you do anything different, but you still miss it. It's just like this no man's land, right? Then Katrina happened. When Katrina pulled a bunch of people out, came back out, and all these really successful people were like, hey, can you help me and my family and my business have a better plan for something like that? And I was like, man, not only can I do that, because that's what I've done my whole life, right? But for the foreseeable future, everyone I know who's going to be getting out of the community is going to be better at it and more current than I am. And also there's a part of me, like, counterterrorism, counter evil, however you want to call it, like, economics has a role in that. And if I can help a good company go to hard places and do good things and economically stabilize that environment and create jobs, unemployed fighting age males, I mean, it's a big part of the opposition that we go against sometimes. So if I can help stabilize and create opportunities and economies, then it felt like I was still in the good versus evil kind of thing a little bit. And then I just started stumbling into the opportunity to start companies and fell in love with I love starting companies that allow veterans and athletes to transition more effectively than I did from the ball field and the battlefield. That's the whole thing. Like, hey, when you leave the ball field to the battle on Friday, I want you to come to work on Monday and plug in doing something you're a subject matter expert and have credibility in. And then you're going to do that until you meet someone you didn't know and discover something else you didn't know how to do. But it took me probably a good 7-8 years to figure out, okay, this is who I am, where I am. That's one of the reasons Carry the Load started too, man. Like, Carry the Load, I think there's a hole in our soul that is only filled by service to others, and being in a professional service for a long time, for me, one of the reasons I wanted to start a Carry the Load is a way to take care of the boys take care of you. And as a guy who lost my father, I know how it makes me feel. My dad died in 1992, and to this day, if I run into someone who knew my dad and they tell me stories about my dad, it's profound for me. So Coleman and Steven and I are like, man, how do we go to where our friends' kids are every year and make sure they know their dad's never forgotten? And so for me, Carry the Load was a way to continue to take care of the boys and their families, right? So, but it took me 7 or 8 years to figure out a system that helped me not feel lost. And like, that's the most important thing as a dude. Like, don't be lost. And wrong's not cool, but you can work with wrong. But sometimes you're not wrong, you're just early. So don't be lost. Work with wrong, and sometimes you're not wrong, you're just early. You got to be around people who know more about this map that you're on than you do. So they say, hey man, you're not wrong, you're just early, right? And so for me, being an entrepreneur was a way to find people to be around and learn from on this map that I'm on right now as a husband, a dad, and as a business leader, right? Because the way you get to the high ground is always the same. You find and follow the right people to the right places, and you become your version of what you love about them. And that's what we do. You're a new guy. Hey, there's the LPO. There's my department head. You chase the guy and take from him that which is great, ignore which doesn't apply or you don't like. And I always say, like, we're the right side of an equal sign. And who's on that left side has a lot to do with who we are and how we are, right? And so, it probably took till Katrina and a couple of years after that, and finding ways to work with and be around the guys that I loved and made me better. And then I started going like, okay, I'm where I'm supposed to be.
And is Trident Response Group was born out of
Yeah,
Katrina
TRG was a
response?
byproduct of Katrina, right? Because I went into wealth management, and it was not the good thing for me. Like, I would go, hey, let me manage your money. And they go, no. I'm like, well, I don't want to manage your stupid money anyway. I hate you and everything about you. I had some anger issues. I'm also really honest. So I go, hey, let me manage your wealth. They go, no. Are you better than my person? I'm like, who's your person? They tell them, like, no. Like, they're so good. If they die, call me, but I'd stay with them, right? and
Which is a great way to.
Oh yeah, I was
client
like,
base.
Clint, can you make the shot? Like, no, fro. You know, like, Jack, like be differential of the expertise. But all these really successful families were the ones that said, hey, will you help me and my family and my business? And I'm like, yeah, I know how to do that. And then I kind of like that net jet model. You don't need a jet, you just need hours. So I kind of built that subscription platform, and like, you don't need me all the time. You just need guys like me to help you think about things, and then in the event something happens. And then we started training people, because mine is like, hey man, if I'm not going to be with you, we want to elevate your personal readiness capability to a degree. And then the way we train people is just really fun, because I'm blessed, man. I was trained by some of the best coaches in college and pro football, best, trainers in the SEAL team. So the way we train is real engaging, and so that each company has kind of been spawned off of success from the other company, right? Like, because if you're really good at something, people are going, hey, what else can you do? And then you just tell them. And every job, every company, like, my deal is like, when you come off because athletes and veterans are the same kind of animal. It's just lions and tigers, right? And all of us go through the identity crisis when we step on the new map, right? And so my deal is like, hey, how do we look at our kind? I go, hey, when you come off the battlefield in the special operations community, really the whole military, but the special operations community and the direct action units, conventional, unconventional, you're uniquely positioned and credible to help you protect themselves and each other, perform at a high level from the neck up, compete and recover. That's performance from the neck down. And so those are really the three companies, and you just kind of push someone into something they're already an expert in, and make it to, as Merle Haggard would say, make it through December.
Yeah. So knowing where Trident started,
Yeah.
where is it now, and what all do you guys do and offer?
Yeah, so TRG really kind of has two arms. We have Trident Response Group, which is where we're effectively like a third-party director of global security for families and businesses, right? So to pay someone like you or me full-time to be a director of global security, like, there's not a lot of people that have the complexity to warrant that kind of investment, because we cost what we cost, right? And so how do we fractionalize that and give people access to the expertise that guys like us have on an as-needed basis that keeps them informed and then can surge into it if we need to, kind of like a QRF in a way. And then the training side is kind of the readiness side. So when I go TRG, and the R could be whatever you need the most, right? And the other reason I did that too is a lot of guys that were working for me, they weren't team guys. They're Rangers and SF and MARSOC and Marines and 11 Bravos, man. And I would get, no one meant anything by this, but I would get really irritated by it. They'd be down at the shop, going into the shoot house, and hey, so you were a SEAL too? And the guy would be like, no, man, I was just an Army infantryman. Like, no, he was 173rd. He fought in Restrepo. Like, he's like, I wanted those guys to be recognized for who and what they are, right? And I love our community, but I want that guy to be seen as the Ranger and the SF and the infantry. And so I didn't want the assumption to be everybody here was a team guy, because I kind of grew up in a purple environment. Like, we need all of us, right? And so you have the Trident Response side, which I kind of described. Then you have the Trident Readiness side, which is really the training side. And we're like going, hey, so we built this facility downtown, and I call it the Ready Lab. And the way I say it is like, hey, the Ready Lab is a movie studio where we recreate the scenarios you worry about, and then just show you how to be your own hero. Right.
That's awesome.
And so it's just a modular shoot house, but it's not about the gun. I always tell people, like, hey man, the gun's a tool. Like, my bride doesn't like guns, but she can clear a house with a can of Raid, and mechanically it's the same thing, 20-foot steady stream, right? So it's a kind of a modular environment. And I just go, hey, what are you worried about? I'm worried about carjacking. I'm like, okay, pull around back. The simunitions, all that other stuff, and we just teach them how to do it and then not need us, right? And
it's all walks of life come through that training.
Yeah. I mean, everybody we have a system. I I call it radiology, because you put ology on the end of anything and you make it the study of it, right? And so for me, it's like, hey, figuring out what your reasonable foreseeable risks are and getting you ready for that. Like, how do you think, plan, train and take action when you need to? So, we have this thing called the Ready DNA. And so the Ready DNA goes, hey, who are you? What's your reality? What's your physicality? And what's your mentality? And we just kind of build a system that's right for you. Because I tell people, like, you don't need to be me. You need to be like, what does ready look like for you? And for me, there's a real simple formula. Ready equals resistance plus resilience. And resistance is being ready for your reasonable foreseeable risks. And resilience is being ready for the unforeseen and extraordinary event. And everybody wants to focus on resilience, but you got to do the fundamentals, man, because the fundamentals are the foundation.
And so for all those clients, I mean, is everything custom, or do you have like?
I mean, it's custom like gear is. Like within some absolutes, there's some. What's really customized is kind of the intensity and the scenario driven and the. So, like for instance, when we look at the Ready DNA, I'll look at someone's mentality. Hey, are they timid, aware, aggressive, or hypervigilant? 1, 2, 3, 4. And these aren't scores; they're just designations, right? And you and I know that. Hey, I'd rather someone be aware than aggressive and hypervigilant, because if you're aggressive and hypervigilant, you're going to tilt something that's uncertain towards bad. So, if I'm dealing with someone who's hypervigilant, hyperaggressive, like that movie Warrior, we'll play classical music in the background and try to moderate kind of their emotions and help them thinkers. Then we look at the physicality. We go limited, capable, athletic, elite, right? And all we're going to do is deliver that which we know to be best for them in the way their brain works and with what their body can do. Because if you train someone to do something they can't do, you haven't helped them, right? But we love helping people feel like their own heroes, man. My daughter told me, Dad, I want to walk around Dallas like you do. I'm like, no, you don't. I walk around Dallas angry all the time. Like I was like, ooh, I'm going to go to that. Maybe that bank will get robbed and I can get in a fight with somebody, right? Like just get this like untapped rage all the time. I was like, you just want to walk around feeling ready. Yeah. And so we just love helping people, families, businesses feel ready.
And so for a prospective client, if they called you and said, hey, do you tailor it? I mean, is it one person at a time? Is it 5 people? I mean,
I mean, the answer is yes. It can be whatever. But I'm a fan of training the ecosystem. Hey, bring the 4 people that you run around the most with. Because who you're around the most with is who you're going to be around if something happens. You won't be the only one that knows what to do. Yeah. So like my daughters, they're 3 or 4 friends. We work with all of them. You have these families that kind of vacation together. I'm like, great, bring the whole family together. And a lot of it's not even the sexy stuff. It's stop the bleed. And so we have everything runs on listen, I think you got to pay attention to reality because I live in the real world, right? And so we have this kind of system where we go, hey, tell me what you're worried about. And they go, boom. We go, okay, probability, possible, unlikely, possible, probable, imminent, 1 through 4, right? Challenge from a cognitive perspective, how hard is it to handle? So neuroscience kind of categorizes, and there's a corporate guy, I can't remember his name, but there's this scale of kind of complexity, and it's simple, complicated, complex, chaotic, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we look at availability, and this is kind of where guys like you and I think like, hey, how long am I on my own? I call it being poor. So what's the period of our responsibility? Like when my house is on fire, how long till fire trucks show up? Not my neighbor with a flex hose, God love them. But if it's 7 minutes, I got to own 7 minutes. So I got to stack everything to where I can handle this for 7 minutes till help comes. So availability is minutes, hours, days, unknown, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you have responsibility, meaning within this group of 5 people, who are you responsible for? Myself, me plus 1 to 2, me plus 3 to 5, me plus many. And your responsibility is going to dictate kind of what we have you ready to do. So what happens is you have this math that produces a metric, and metrics are really good at helping the brain not freak out about everything. But if you're looking at a 16, hey, it's imminent, it's chaotic, no one's coming, like your dad said, and I got to take care of a school bus full of people. That's a tough deal, man. But it's a number. It's 16, so let's get to work on it. Like there's a movie I use to kind of talk about this now. There's a great movie. Matthew McConaughey just did one called The Lost Bus.
Yeah, I've seen it.
That's an example. Hey, it's happening. Nobody's coming. Don't have a map. We're making this up as we go. And I got a bus full of kids. Like that's a 16 right there.
Yeah.
But people will feel it. Like once I give it a number, then it becomes slayable.
It's
like once you
tangible.
see the dragon, then you're like, oh, this is going to be hard to kill, but I can still kill it, right? So we have a whole system that helps people. I would tell you the other quality that I think we have in our community, and I think really in most of the successful kind of direct action communities, great thinkers. Guys never stop thinking. There's a really great movie. I know you probably remember. You're a little bit younger than me, I think, but not much. The Edge. Remember that with Anthony Hopkins? Alec Baldwin's in it. They're in a plane crash. There's a bear chasing them in Alaska or something like that. I'll send you a link to it, but there's a scene where they survive the plane crash. The photographer, Alec Baldwin and Anthony Hopkins, and they've made it after the first. They got away from the bear the first time, right? So they're all kind of catching their breath, and Anthony Hopkins is this really successful businessman, and so they're all catching their breath, and all of a sudden Anthony Hopkins goes, "Do you know why most people die in the wilderness?" And they were just like, "What? Like, do you know why most people die in the wilderness?" And they're like, "We don't have time for this, but why?" And he goes, "Shame." And they go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Because there's always a moment where they could have done something, and they didn't. And so they sit there and they focus on the thing they should have done, and they didn't. And they just sit there in shame instead of doing what they should have done." And they go, "What's that?" He goes, "Thinking." Right? And so one of the things I love about our community is dudes are always thinking. Yeah. And we have a very creative community. The entirety of the special operations community and really a lot of the infantry unit, it's very creative guys, right? And I think for me as an officer, I was like, the best thing I can do is avail myself to the genius of these devious, creative thinkers.
A cunning enlisted man.
Yeah. Like, hey man, figure it out, And so it's fun. It's fun to watch people realize they can still think.
Yeah, that's great stuff. Is there a kind of not boilerplate, but typical response client where this is the service
it's
you provide?
Typically it's kind of an institutional family. Families done pretty well, or it's a privately held company that doesn't necessarily have an integrated direct global security, or it's a publicly traded company, and then we'll augment and we'll come alongside their directors of global security.
And what is the typical thing you do for them?
It depends on them. It depends on where they are and what they do. So we'll basically, one of the things I tell people is like, hey, there's always all the government agencies are built for a greater good, right? Rightly so. And there's a gap between the greater good and your good because it's not built for you. So we try to understand what that gap is, and then we try to fill it. We try to fill it with guys and readiness and information. I'll give you an example. This is a hypothetical. Say there's a company that wanted to put an expat population in Indonesia, right? And they're trying to figure out where to put the expat population. Well, guys like you and I know what an EO is, what a non-combatant evacuation operation is, and we can generally anticipate where the Marine Corps is going to bring in people to go to the embassy and pull Americans out, right? So nurturing their expat community into the natural pathway of the Marine Corps and the NEO elements, you're just helping everybody. You're helping State Department, you're helping the Marine Corps, you're helping guys like us go and find American citizens and get them to safety, and you're helping that company. So doing that kind of stuff is the kind of thing we love doing.
Yeah, that's really cool. You mentioned other companies. Have there been other companies that you've formed or started?
Yeah, so I really have kind of 4 companies. I have TRG, then I have a company called Holdfast. And Holdfast is that performance from the neck up, kind of the keynote speaking, the executive coaching, right? And I love that because, like, there's some guys that are comfortable talking in a room full of 1,000 people. There's some guys that aren't. But I love showing off the intellect and the leadership ability of our enlisted and senior enlisted. And if I put a senior chief or a chief with 3 platoons under their belt, right, in a room full of 15 members of YPO, he's going to hold court. She's going to hold court. And there's some things that export to these maps, ball field, battlefield, boardroom maps. There's a percentage of what it takes to be successful that transfers seamlessly. Like mostly from the neck up skills, the hard skills are usually domain centric, right? But the soft skills and experiences, they you pull them right over with you to the boardroom.
Yeah.
And what's fun for me is to watch. Last night we had an event at the office, 20-year SF 5th group guy. And I tell him, I was like, hey, man, teach these people how to shoot with the units and all this other stuff, and then answer their questions about just leadership, small unit leadership. SF's some of the best teachers on the planet, man. They have amazing executive skills, right? They're nation builders, right? And I knew it was going to happen because I've seen it happen 1,000 times down in the Ready Lab, is he's not even out. He's getting out. He's on terminal. He's like, I'm really interested in kind of business development and consulting. And I'm like, okay. And so he does all these things with these guys. And this morning I sent him like 4 emails like, hey, there were 3 CEOs in that group last night, and all of them want to take you to lunch, tell you what business development looks like for them, and they're interested in talking to you about coming to work for them.
Wow. That's awesome.
And that's my favorite thing is, because, like the relationship we have, like I say, hey, dude, you're going to be great. And you're like, yeah, because that's what I'm going to say. But when you see other people you don't know say you're going to be great, also you're like, maybe I am. Maybe Clint's not just being nice, right? And so when guys see that, and my favorite thing, I love this, when guys come in and, like, I want guys to go home and know what they did that day and know that they can find the high ground in the boardroom, and that what they did on the ball field and the battlefield, they're not stopping at the bottom. Like, you come to the boardroom, you're not at the bottom, you're at the beginning. And so mapping people into relationships based on what they already know. I mean, that's the scripture. That's Proverbs 22:29. Proverbs 22:29. See a man excellence work and not speak for small men, and speak for kings. And so when you're really good at something, leaders are going to ask you what else you're really good at. And sometimes they know more about what you're good at than you do. And you earn the right to learn it from them.
Yeah.
That's the whole. So Holdfast does that, the leadership development, keynote speaking and executive coaching. And then Windage is the sports and human performance piece. So that's like, all of us we're training addicts, man. Like we like performing at a high level. We want to look at gear, technology, programs, and people that can help us continue to perform at a high level. All of us are dealing with pain management. All of us have ravaged our bodies and our brains without any real regrets. We just got to do something with it now. So we work with like Division I and professional, strength and conditioning coaches. It's interesting in the college world. If you look at a college football program, the busiest part of any college football program is the strength and conditioning staff. So the strength and conditioning staff, because all the other positions are kind of regulated by NCAA. So the head coach can be around the players this amount of time, out of season, position coach, they're out recruiting. The strength staff they're with players all the time. So the players, the strength and conditioning coaches, they're with the players all the time. And so they have really 4 jobs. A great strength and conditioning coach will tell you this. His number 1 job is to create injury-resistant athletes. Then make them bigger, faster, and stronger while not compromising their injury resistance. And then you got to create the culture and foster the culture that the coach wants. And then you're sometimes the first father figure. So you're kind of the babysitter's a hard word, but you're the problem solver, right? But every once in a while, you got to figure out how to spend $26 million, even if you don't want to. Because University X just built a new weight room, and you're trying to land this hot shot quarterback. So now you got to redesign this beautiful weight room that you just redesigned 3 years ago, and you got to choose tools, technology, programs, and people. So a lot of times we'll go in and we'll go, hey, what are your automatic yes, no's? And we'll replicate their decision making and come back like, hey, here's 3 COAs. Here's a great technology. Here's how you integrate, catapult systems and some of those wearables and stuff. So, and guys like us, we're fascinated by that. So imagine being a guy you and I both know that's been in the teams for 26 years, doesn't know what he's going to do. He's Master Chief. And I go, hey, man, I don't know what you're going to do full time, but for the next 3 months, can you help me do this? And what I'll need you to do is just answer questions about small unit leadership in a group full of CEOs, show people how to kind of protect themselves inside their home, and then test this gear that this Division I football program wants to decide whether it should use for recovery for its athletes. And guys are like,
hell yeah.
Do I need to pay you to that? Like, no, you get paid for this, right? So that's the deal. Like,
That's awesome.
Help guys realize they're at the beginning of the climb to the high ground in the boardroom, not at the bottom.
That's awesome.
Because I feel like I was at the bottom, and I really wasn't. Like I just had to assemble that which I'd already been assigned. If that makes any sense.
For sure, it does. I am curious. I mean, you mentioned Division I athletics and kind of the model that you take in there. Has the explosion of NIL money over the last few years changed a lot?
So it's really interesting. Not yet. Where it will eventually change. So this is fascinating. So I know a lot of guys that are coming up with this really amazing human performance technology out of Palo Alto, all this other stuff, right? And they were trying to sell it to NFL teams, you know. And I was like, hey, man, that's not how the NFL works. And they go, what do you mean? I said, well, there's really three clients when you look at the thing on the NFL. There's the owners. There's four. There's the owners. There's the league. There's the players, and there's the teams, right? And this particular technology could reveal some physical asymmetries, like, hey, this hamstring's bigger than this hamstring, or this is just really wild what it can have. I said, there's no player on the planet that wants his team to see that, hey, my left hamstring's what, but the player can pay for it. Like, the player wants to know everything, and the best players in the NFL, I call them pros. In the NFL, there's players and there's pros. Players are guys that have gotten in the NFL. Pros are guys that want to stay in the NFL. And what pros always do is they build this little ecosystem around themselves. Like they got their own docs, they got their own physical therapists, they got their own, James Harrison. A lot of guys they recognize that their ability to play is the corporation. TB12, that whole thing. The first guy I really saw do that was back when you and I were probably in high school. I saw this video about Roger Craig, running back San Francisco, and his post-game process. It was the first time I'd ever seen a chiropractor. I was like, what is he doing? Is he going to snap his neck? I saw that in Sho Gasugi, Ninja Rising, right? And it was the first athlete I'd seen that was treating himself like the asset, right? Now in the NFL, most pros do that. They have their own, and that ecosystem will go with them, whatever team they have, because the team cares about you while you're there. Doesn't mean they're bad people. It's just that's the business, right? And so what's going to happen at some point in time is these athletes at the collegiate level are going to be hopefully and ideally not in conflict with the resources these college teams make available to them, but they're going to want their own ability to get better. No one wants to be dependent. Like you and I grew up when, Oz was, we were rocking Vietnam gear, and then all of a sudden Oz starts sewing stuff together and we're starting to build our own kit. Like, that's how you know someone is a pro, because they're investing in themselves, right? So what I think will happen, at least with some of the things we'll do, is we'll get asked to do that due diligence and make those recommendations at the collegiate and maybe even at the high school level. And I like doing that because I love protecting people from the next best thing. It's not really the best thing, right? And some of the guys, our strength and conditioning programs. This one, I remember Beef wrote this paper it was when he was our third O about, and I think he and I talked about it. I can't remember who we talked about it. I said, listen, at the end of the day, we're tactical athletes. And so we need to replicate the supply chain of tactical athlete performance that we had as athletes, personal, physical therapy, all this other stuff, and recovery. And so then it started getting introduced in the community, right? And so there's a lot of witch doctors in that, man. There's a lot of snake oil salesmen in that space. And you and I know some guys that are brilliant. And when those guys start asking you questions about derivative compounds and secondary, tertiary effects metabolically, you can see some of those guys go, oh, I didn't know I was going to get asked that question, right? So I love protecting people from those kind of technologies and those kind of people.
I love it. On the broader, just college athletic scale, as kind of an entity, do you think NIL money will maximize and capitalize talent and be ultimately a good thing, or do you think it's kind of ruined college?
No, I don't think it's ruined. I think it can be as good a thing. I don't think it'll ever be totally good or totally bad. But here's what I know. Growing up around here, I saw a lot of kids, a lot of my friends had the ability to meaningfully impact their families with their athletic ability. And then they tear their ACL.
Yeah.
And then, some colleges honor, like my little brother was going to have a great career at Oklahoma State. Hurt his back squatting 700 pounds, right? Like, I was mad that just because he can doesn't mean he should. I was frustrated with his strength coach. But fortunately, Les Miles at the time kept Tanner on scholarship, right? But if Les Miles hadn't kept Tanner on scholarship, Tanner might not have been able to graduate from Oklahoma State. Like, he would have, because that's one of the reasons I went to the Naval Academy, is to push resources over to him. But so I love the opportunity for young men and women who have the athletic ability to monetize that athletic ability within reason, right? Because they can change their family's fortunes. I love that, right? Because up till then, only the schools benefited, right? And schools aren't the bad guy here, but the ability to be independent.
Well, they're a byproduct of the system.
Right. So I like it. I think I think it needs to be controlled. I think that putting some kind of cap, like, hey, you need this much, and the rest goes into a trust that no one can access till you're 26. I mean, there needs to be some formalizing of it to protect people from it.
Yeah, I think that's, for sure a smart way to do it. Maybe even in the NFL, I don't know. But do you encourage, or would you sign off on similar team caps the way the NFL and NBA?
Yeah, I mean, I think that creates. I'm inherently kind of an Adam Smith free markets guy, but I also live in reality, right? And so the reality is there's asymmetric resources, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you have a T. Boone Pickens that says I'm going to give $5 billion to Oklahoma State,
so I do think there needs to be structure,
Yeah.
But the other thing I'd tell you is, you look at the sports where certain teams always have the most money, they don't always win. So the Yankees would win every year if it was the money piece. But there's a real good book by named Sam Brown called The Captain Class. And he actually does this study on why do dynasties exist? Like, what is the catalyst to an organization, an athletic organization becoming a dynasty? Is it talent? No, it's not talent. Is it resources? Interesting enough, it's not resources. What it is there's a personality, and there's a personality called the captain. Very rarely is the captain the most talented person, but the captain has these qualities, right? And these qualities make everyone around them better. And what I think sometimes in our community, we got a lot of captains, right? Which is great. Not the 06, but
right.
Our community will never lack for a leader. Like, our community will not suffer a leadership vacuum. We got to play whack-a-mole every once in a while. There's almost too many chiefs, not enough Indians, in some ways. But this personality, and he shows it, and he created some structure. He said, hey, the teams had to compete physically against other teams. There has to be more than 5 people. So he created this criteria, and then he started saying, it's like, this organization had this person, this organization had this person, right? And it's not always who you think it is. So he says Derek Jeter, great captain, not an all-time great captain, because you can't divorce a captain from his productivity. And in 12 years, I think the Yankees won 2 World Series. So we have Tim Duncan. You look at what he did with the Spurs, he's a captain. And it gives people permission to lead the way they're built to, right? And so Tim Duncan, not a boisterous, not a big personality, but the way he would talk to people and what he would do outside the court, right? So I say all that to say this. Money certainly is an advantage. Like, when I talk about that achievement equation, angles plus allies plus advantages equals achievement. Advantages are treasure and talent. Those are 2 advantages. And people go, do you mean time? I'm like, no, because we all have the same amount of time. All treasure and talent allow you to do is to use your time differently or experience time differently, right? And so rarely are we the source of the treasure and talent disadvantage or advantage. We're the steward of it, right? So just because someone's got a lot of money doesn't mean it's being stewarded well. But I do think we need to work to not create hyper disparity between institutions, right?
Yeah.
But listen, we don't have any NIL at the Naval Academy. We won 11 games this year.
Yeah.
It's hard to win 11 games against air, right?
Yeah.
So we don't have NIL. We don't have all this other stuff. What we do have is the ability to provision for yourself and your family, doing something that's incredibly rewarding for up to 20, 30 years of your life. Like, we can offer that, right? And the opportunity to work with guys like you.
Me?
Like, yeah.
Now you're just making me blush.
No, I mean, but like for me, like I played. My deal was like, I had great leadership at the Naval Academy, and I had great coaches. And one of my coaches was a Ranger, and he told me, he's like, hey, every snap is an opportunity to earn the right to lead and be responsible for the guys that are entrusted to you. And for me, I was profoundly affected by that. Like, if you go back and watch games, we didn't, we won a lot my junior, senior, my first years, but you watch me in the fourth quarter, and I would hope that you would see no difference in me than winning or losing a game, because I was like, hey, every snap is an opportunity. Like, I want Mike Ritland to see me play in a losing game my junior year and go, Clint is ripping people's faces off, right? Because you're going to make some decisions about how much you trust me based on that.
Yeah.
And that's when I love, the boys are honest, man. The boys will earning the right, earning the trust of the guys, and preserving the trust of the guys. And I may be wrong in this, but here's what I said. Like, I look at how good an O was by how many of the guys would work for him again. If the boys would work for him again, he was good. If they wouldn't work for him again, unless they're just a bunch of shit bags, right? Which is rarely the case. You always have one or two, but so for me, I don't know how we got on that. I got pretty fired up on that.
Well, I mean, to me, the original question was NIL, but it's all related. And you're speaking of leadership and dynasties. I promise this is the last sports question.
No, I love this. I mean,
we'll move on to some current event stuff. But speaking of that, it would be difficult to argue that Brady and Belichick, are not by far the biggest dynasty in NFL.
Yeah, I mean, you look at what they're able to do collectively. Yeah, you can't argue with it.
What I'm curious is, do you think that there's at least a potential for May and Vrabel to repeat a similar run?
Maybe. I'm going to say this about May, and it's not a negative at all. May is a very, very gifted athlete, and he's a very, very good kid. Brady was unique in that he didn't have May's athleticism, and because you have that, like I beat a lot of guys because I had all these different systems because I needed a system. So when my talent's not enough, I had 5 other things I could try, right? And so for me, talent is a line of credit, and you're eventually going to do something that exhausts that line of credit, and you better have something in the tank when that happens. And that's not a character issue, it's an exposure issue. So this sounds weird, but I don't know if May has
maybe the
necessity. I don't know if he's had to build the disclaimer. None of this is a character assessment, right? This is a kind of I think Brady has had a bulletproof mind since he was in high school, and he's always had to believe in himself, and always had to be willing to be his own fan in a way that very few other people in the NFL have to. And I think may not have had to do that yet. Now he can. But
I think how he responds this upcoming season to losing the Super Bowl.
He'll respond wonderfully.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, he is such a good kid, and Vrabel's a tough guy, man.
I guess just from a learning standpoint of being able to use that as an experience to learn from.
Yeah, I think the Brady Belichick was a freak of circumstances, and I think it occurred over a period of the game where I don't know if it can be replicated because the supply chain's different. Like, you look at the evolution of the NFL player from Brady's first Super Bowl to his last Super Bowl, and it's in many ways a different game. I'll give you an example of this. So, great Oregon offense. Chip Kelly was killing it at Oregon, goes to the NFL. And there's part of the reason that offense doesn't work in the NFL is because that offense is about inducing mistakes. Hey, I induce a mistake, my quarterback whips it, receiver catches it. And so, say it's a 0.9 to 1.25 second window where that quarterback can throw that ball. Well, in the NFL,
they don't make mistakes.
That cornerback can change directions in 0.2 seconds. So the math is off. Like, you don't have a quarterback that has the shoulder integrity to throw a ball as fast as it has to be thrown in the reduced window that's been created by inducing a mistake, right?
Except maybe Mahomes. Right?
Yeah. I mean, really.
Yeah, you saw it.
But over time, no.
Yeah.
So it's just a different. It's just a different scenario. Like I tell people all the time, like the college player now is the how do I say this? So the high school player now is the college player when I played college. The college player now is the NFL player when I played in the NFL. The world's not seen the modern NFL player. Like Myles Garrett just didn't exist. It just wasn't there. And it shows you how incredible Jim Brown was. Like Jim Brown could, I mean, you to really understand his athleticism and what an amazing athlete he was, he could play now, right? So, Javon Curse, some of these other guys like Khalil Mack, like that didn't happen, And so it's just everything's different enough to where you can't go. I don't know if that'll happen again.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it's through no fault of Vrabel or Mays. It's
right.
Just
it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Recently, you saw Joe Kent resign.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Man, I'd be slow to speculate that because I don't know him. I know of him, but I don't know him, and I just don't feel like I know enough to have a worthy opinion on it.
Yeah. Well, I won't ask the 2 follow-up questions then. When you see what's happening with Iran right now, is there anything that doesn't sit right with you?
One of the things I've always loved about us is we go out of our way and incur more risk to preserve the safety of civilians and innocents. And I just want to make sure that's always still happening. I always want to make sure we're balancing aggression and decisiveness with and I'm not saying it's not happening. I'm saying I don't want this to not happen, right? I want to make sure we're doing everything in such a way that we're incurring the risk to preserve the innocents.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Seen a lot of, it's hard to even know kind of how to coin it, I guess, perspectives from people in a lot of different, I would say, areas of industry that have kind of made the claim that we were forced into this by Israel. Even some of the comments that Marco Rubio has made have been a little bit of a little eye-catching, ear-catching. Do you think that there's an element of being pushed into it by them is accurate?
Well, I don't know if anybody pushes President Trump into anything. I do think ultimately we've been pushed into this by the Iranian regime. I don't know that we could be pushed into doing something like this as much as people would like to believe. I'm sure we were certainly encouraged.
Well, I know. I mean, one of the things that I saw him say, and I don't want to say tap dance, but maybe further clarified what he meant after the fact. But the gist of it, paraphrasing, is that we knew for sure that Israel was going to do what we're doing now.
Yeah.
And our thought process was largely preemptive in that we knew that if they did that, A, alone, and B, without kind of a mass effort, that Iran would attack nearby, U.S. interest bases, et cetera. And we wanted to get in front of that and prevent that, again, preemptively.
Well, I mean, they said they would. I mean, the regime's going to do what it says it's going to do. Sometimes it's just looking for permission, right?
Yeah. But I guess from that standpoint, I mean, does that lead you to believe or consider that that's being pushed into it if we're saying, okay, well, if you guys are going to do it? Because I have a hard time believing that we couldn't have, if we wanted to, we collectively, administratively, et cetera, wouldn't have been able to say, if you do this alone, here are the consequences, and prevented them from doing it.
I think that's been being said for years. I think that's kind of what has historically been said.
So why not now then? I guess that's my question. Is like if we,
I think it's a great question.
If we've been able to do that in the past, say, look, I know you want to do this. If you do this,
the reasonable man theory would say that there is some imminence that we can't tell Israel ultimately what to do. They're going to do what they're going to do. And I think you can listen to someone say they're going to destroy you for so long before you just start believing them, and you look at Hezbollah and Hamas and all this other stuff, right? And then I think that the reasonable man would think that there's some type of indication that if Israel does this, which at some point in time they're going to do what they feel like they got to do, and these things are going to happen, then we have to be between those things that are going to happen when and if Israel does this.
Yeah, I guess, if you want to call it playing devil's advocate, whatever, think about the hypothetical, though, is that if Israel says, we're doing this, just giving you the heads up.
Yeah.
And our response is, if you do this, we will cut ties with you completely, and you won't get another dime. You'll get no intelligence. We will not support a single.
Would Israel have eventually done that?
Do you think that they still would have done it? I don't know that they would.
I don't know they would have.
Yeah. I mean, so that to me, that's the kind of the crux is that, again, without being behind closed doors, being able to access all the intelligence.
Like we're on this side of the wall now, right?
To say something's imminent, I'm not naive to the fact that there's levels to intelligence that even by displaying what intelligence you have through reverse engineering burns your ability to collect it in the future, and that's not a smart thing to do. However, it's also hard for me to believe that we did everything that we could to convince them not to decide to attack.
Yeah, but I also wonder, like, when is the right time to believe that Iran can do the regime can do what it's always said it's going to do? Like, what's the consequence of that mistake?
Well, so let me throw a hypothetical at you.
We're way in hypothetical land right now. Might as well keep going.
Yeah. So imagine a scenario where, and I'm not saying that this is what I think we should do, just for everybody before they try to rip my head off in the comments. Hypothetically, let's say that we went almost full-blown isolationist and said, we're not meddling in the Middle East whatsoever. We're not having any of our amphibious readiness groups, no carrier groups, no bases, Bahrain, Qatar, you name it. We're pulling everything out. You guys fucking deal with it, right? We'll worry about our own energy sector. We'll figure out a way, like we were talking earlier.
Become autonomous, become sovereign.
Yeah, I mean, like we were talking about earlier, figuring out a way to nationalize our energy policy where it doesn't matter what the global price of oil is, et cetera. Do you think Iran would still have Hezbollah, Houthis, Hamas, and as a state, such an issue with us? And here's the background of that question, because think about China for a second.
Sure.
Not that I'm saying China is the goal of how we should run our country. However, there is at least as much of a global economic and influence power as we are. Some would argue more. Right? Do you see any other countries internationally that have the problem with China that they have with us?
No. I mean, I think what you're talking about is, where is detente that's unacceptable? Like, where's the line where we don't have to get along?
Yeah. How do we stop?
How do we keep not getting along from going beyond that? Right.
How much of this is self-induced? Because again,
listen, the history of any nation is dealing with. I mean, we fight dragons that we hatch all the time, and Bin Laden, Hussein. I mean, this is I say we have a history of that, but every nation that tries to influence ends up doing that. But I mean, I think certainly there's some secondary, tertiary, unintended consequences we deal with. Yeah,
I mean, because when I think about the level of kind of hands in the cookie jar that China has globally with energy, with rare earth, Venezuela, all over sub-Saharan Africa. I mean, they've got clause in everything, right? I mean, the same way that we would justify why we need bases in Bahrain and Qatar, and
they've done it economically.
Strike like they don't have any less influence and meddling in the economies of other countries. In many places, they have far more than we do. What they don't have, though, are military bases in those areas, carrier groups, strike groups, et cetera, and
Right.
they don't have countries that are attacking them,
Yeah.
because of it. I mean,
Yeah.
to me, like that's not something that you should
Yeah,
argue.
it's fascinating. I mean, what's the difference between dynasty and enterprise? And so
I think it's
I
military
think
power.
Chinese has a dynasty mentality. They think in terms of thousands of years.
Well, but
right?
I think the biggest thing is that they don't have the military presence all over the planet
Right.
that we do. They have the economic presence,
Right.
and to me, like it's hard to discount or argue that isn't playing a role.
Yeah, I mean, I'm slow to esteem the Chinese Communist Party culturally, as far as life inside of China as a Chinese person, right? And so I think it's easy to take slices and compete them against each other. And I think when you look at the whole of things, without question, we could do things better as a nation. And I think cultivating our own kind of independence and autonomy and not being economically dependent on, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, we're buying, over the last several years, we bought fuel from people that use the proceeds of that fuel to then try to kill us, right? So, I think there's certainly some flaws with the way we do things as a nation, right?
Yeah. Do you trust what we're being told about Iran's nuclear capability right now?
I don't know that I can trust anything that we're being told completely.
Yeah.
I think you and I have just done enough stuff to know that at any given time we're only getting a percentage of. You just learn to not trust anything that you don't have firsthand or immediate secondhand intelligence on, and you assume there's a bias behind everything and an agenda behind everything, and that doesn't mean it's nefarious or malicious. It's just incomplete.
Yeah. With where we're at now, roughly just over a month into strikes into Iran, if you were to put a percentage chance of boots on the ground inside the country, what would you put that at?
I'd want it to be low. I want it to be a low percentage.
I guess want versus what you think, though.
I think there's a percentage of there's a potential percentage for hyper-focused, very intentional movement in and then coming out of. I don't think there's a high percentage of occupation.
Like targeted hits, raids, et cetera, getting
Recovery, hits, raids, disruption, and then we go into the, hey, what is an incursion? Is swimming into a harbor and blowing up the drone boats? Is that an incursion? They'd say, hey, 12 nautical miles, international waters, right? So, yeah, I think there's and done correctly, it could limit the loss of life to everybody. But I think there's potential for that.
Yeah. I guess, not trying to put words in your mouth, would you say that there's a high percentage chance that some incursion of U.S. forces on mainland Iran?
I don't know if I can say high percentage, but I know we're splitting hairs here, right? But I'd say remember I said earlier, so unlikely, possible, probable, imminent. I'd put it between possible and probable.
Okay, that's a effective way to...
47%. 47%.
Can you be more specific?
Yeah, 47.3.
Yeah. Where do you think that what's going on right now positions us with our Western allies?
Well, I think everyone's offended when you tell them they're not doing enough, especially when you're right. So I think it is forcing a recalibration of relationships across the board. Ours with Western allies with us, right? It's not business as usual. It's not kicking the can down the road. It's not like everyone's being have the, and I do think I think it's a reasonable question to go, how many nations are dependent on the Straits of Hormuz being open, and are you willing to commit a percentage of the effort to keep it open? I think it's a fair question to ask, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, because I think especially now, like you can even disagree with the fact that we did what we did, but that's in the rear view.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
you're going to have to deal with what's coming forward.
It is
either
what
way.
it is at some point in
Yeah.
time, right? Whether
Yeah.
you induced it or not, at the end of the day, it's a reality right now.
Yeah. Being so kind of ingrained into from the global response side, like from a security, especially corporate events and things of that nature, I'm curious, do you have a position, a take, a perspective on the Charlie Kirk thing? It's easy to sit here and say this should have been done to prevent it, and there's a million things that could have been done. But do you have a philosophy on if there's way more to it than we're being told? And if
I don't know. I don't know is the answer to that. I do know that volatility is an all-time high, and I think we have to take express threats more seriously than you've ever really had. Right? Rogue shareholders, pissed off shareholders. You know, it's not hard to affect a threat, right? And you know I need to dive more into what happened to offer an opinion that's worth listening to.
Would you say you've not paid close enough attention to have an opinion on whether or not the actual shooter was the actual shooter and that it was a 30
I haven't paid enough attention to it to have a credible opinion on it. I think that we're well past the days where you can look at a risk matrix and say unlikely anymore. Like I think our wildest imagination is you got to consider as possible now. How resourced people are, how quickly they can gain information. You know, one of the things with social media, I've always told my daughters, and I tell her, is like, hey man, on social media, if you can just post in past tense and avoid patterns, I'd be so grateful. Just post in past tense and avoid patterns. And if you post in past tense and avoid patterns, you make the bad guy do the math. And most bad guys don't want to do the math. Like most bad guys don't have a plan B because it's just easier to be a bad guy. So if you mess with plan A, most bad guys will go find someone easier. But I think when we look at events, I don't think it's fair to law enforcement and to expect them to protect everybody. Because one, they're kind of right of boom, authorized anyway. I think everybody needs to take a whole lot more responsibility for their safety, their security, and the collective safety and security of those within their eyesight, right? I think we need to return to that being part of our national culture.
Yeah.
No, it's just like what your dad told you.
Yeah.
And the other part of what your dad told you, I'd bet, I don't know, and you can ask him, and if I'm wrong, I'll apologize. What I don't think your dad was telling you is, and everybody's not coming as an asshole. I think he's just saying, it's like, hey, no one's coming. You got to figure it out.
Yeah. No, there's no part.
There's no. It's not a damning of anybody that didn't come to help you. He was just saying, like, hey, you got to be able to handle it, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm telling people, like, hey, man, you got. I will never look beyond my sphere of influence to craft plans that protect my bride and daughters.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make them anybody else's responsibility, and I'm going to advantage those law enforcement officers and fire and rescue people who are going to try to help my daughters as much as I possibly can, right?
Amen.
We become overly dependent as a nation. That's one of the things, I think retracting in some ways and elevating our independence and they can feel isolationist at first, but really what it is it's building dependence, vice isolating. And it may feel like isolation with some of our partners, but I don't want to need a nation that doesn't like us to take care of.
Agree. And I think, just the simple adage, get your own house in order first.
Draw the circle around yourself, fix everything inside. You have plenty of work. You'll never get done with it, right? So I think historically we as a nation, and I think most big superpowers at some point in time in their history have meddled more than they'd like to call it meddling.
Yeah.
And whether it was a black swan, and in retrospect you understand it or not, but I think we got plenty of housekeeping to do inside our own borders and inside our own nation.
It's a solid amen on that.
And, you know, I sit there and I listen, I'm all about helping poverty and food. There's all around the world. But, man, we don't have to drive 2 hours from here, and we will find kids that aren't getting fed. And it's to kind of talk about this. So, you know, when I deal with all these strength and conditioning coaches, I'm always fascinated. I'm like, man, how do you put 75 pounds on a kid in a year? And like, how do you do that? And he's like, the answer isn't what you think it is. I go, what? He goes, it's 3 square meals. He goes, all it is 3 square meals. He goes, some of the kids we get, they have turned into 6'4", 275-pound athletes on maybe 1 meal a day, and it's McDonald's, and it's Skittles. So when you start feeding and getting sleep, your body becomes what it was designed to be. And I think we kind of need to do a version of that for our nation.
Yeah.
Hey, when I say take care of our own, I don't mean not take care of anybody else. It's like HAPS. You know, you go to, you know, I don't know about you, but I grew up going like, they say, you know, put your mask on first before you help the kid. I'm like, no way, man. I grew up watching Lone Ranger and Magnum PI. I'm going to help the kid first. And all of a sudden we go to HAPS. You're like, oh, that's why. That's why. Because I'm not going to be conscious to then put the mask on the kid, right?
Yeah.
So, that's my opinion on a lot of things.
I love it. Is there anything that I asked you that I shouldn't have?
No, you didn't ask me any math. That's usually the one that gets me, math questions.
That was actually a trick question.
Yeah.
Usually I say, is there anything I didn't ask you that I should have, but you caught it. So
No, yeah.
Is
No
there
math.
anything that I didn't ask you that I should have?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, this has been fun, man. I've been proud of you for a long time. It's been fun to watch this for a long time, and so the opportunity to sit here and you know, create a dent in this seat that other guys are going to have to sit in. Like, man, who's sitting here last year? Like Clint. And they're like, oh, all right, yeah, that makes sense. Great guy during Hell Week. I'll keep you warm.
Yeah.
Just call me Big Spoon, right? And for those of you who don't know what that means, ask someone who's been cold before. And but no, this is cool. I'm proud of you, and thanks for having me on.
I can't thank you enough for, on such short notice, especially coming and taking the time. It's an honor to know you and to be one of the guys I've known the longest.
How many? Almost 20 years. Almost.
Well, it's almost 30.
30
yeah.
years. See,
Yeah,
this is the math. Freaking math got me again, dude.
27, 28 years. Yeah.
See, that's why.
So
Lowest ranked academy grad to ever get a billet.
Well, that's something to be proud of.
It is.
It's like Mr. Insignificant.
I'm more proud of the personal fouls
Yeah.
than the academic marginalism. So, but this is cool, man. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. I
You
appreciate
got
it, brother.
Appreciate you, man.
To the viewer/listener, I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't, you can choke yourself. And until next time, this is Mic Drop.